Jackpot loot chests were literally everywhere, but my gamer senses tingled. Someone was creeping up behind me, so I swung hard. Just the wind. Nope, my radar never lies. Hiding in the shadows was a half-dead guy in the corner. He must be a tank to survive this long. Do I secure the kill and steal his gear? Nah, tactical retreat. Survival first, looting second. As I dipped, the dude actually let out a sigh of relief, praising the heavens. Of course, his ego told him he'd totally win in a fair fight. Keep dreaming, buddy. He greedily went right back to looting his precious chests. Wham, I gave him a free concussion. As a former army sergeant, my combat IQ is peak. I refuse to die. But hold up, let's rewind the tape. How did this supposedly tough military veteran end up looking like just another average Korean guy? 6 months post-discharge, Jin-sun spends his days reading fantasy webtoons, desperately praying for an isekai truck to hit him. 23 and completely obsessed. But reality called and college was starting. Ever since escaping the military, his actual base was the local internet cafe. He grinded so hard he hit the top 10 global rankings in just 3 months. The game, Royal Ground. 100 players skydive in, scavenge for gear, and mercilessly eliminate everyone else until one absolute Chad remains. He's so toxic, he'll let his duo partner die just to clutch a squad wipe. A literal battle royale masterpiece. Final circle time. 2 sweaty tryhards were heavily pushing Jin-sun's position. They breached the building. Spotting bait loot on the floor, they assumed it was safe. Rookie mistake. Our main character is a total tryhard. Bang. One guy instantly drops. Panicking, the surviving teammate scrambles for his life but eats a clean headshot. Winner winner chicken dinner. Glancing at the clock, reality slaps him in the face. He needs to head home because the dreaded semester starts tomorrow. Ding, mom sends a guilt trip text with his tuition money. Trudging back home, the heavy weight of being a disappointment hits him. Lying in bed, he swears off gaming forever. Yeah, right. He scrolls through his feed and passes out. Morning arrives. Dragging his feet to campus. His gaming buddy is already spamming him for a duo match. Tempted to ditch class, a blinding purple portal suddenly spawns. Before he can even blink, it swallows him whole, leaving his poor backpack stranded on the sidewalk. Where the heck is this? A massive statue, a crowd of weirdos. He blue-screened for a second. Was the universe punishing him for almost skipping lectures? And why is it so noisy? A massive brawl broke out with actual wizards blasting fireballs. Dudes were casually polishing broadswords while explosions went off. Was this a hardcore cosplay convention? What server did he just log into? The giant stone statue boomed, announcing that 100 players had been detected. System initialization. Auto-translating all languages. In a flash, the chaotic babble turned into perfect Korean, yet these psychos kept throwing hands. A wizard screamed at a skeleton, accusing it of kidnapping him, throwing a massive tantrum, but the undead guy literally lacked the brains to care. Enraged, the wizard goes full tryhard. He nukes the skeleton with a massive ultimate skill, but 0 damage. The spell straight up fizzled, leaving him dumbfounded. Guess you can't kill what's already dead, ding. The glowing system casually announces that the deathmatch is starting. Difficulty level is easy. Objective is surviving in the top 90. The battleground, the royal capital. And crazy loot drops for the top 10. Tutorial skipped entirely. Safe zone rules applied in the lobby, so player damage was zeroed out as minimaps popped up. Welcome to Cloud Survival. Time limit is 100 days. Just like the game, the play zone violently shrinks every day. Last man standing rules survive, and you get sent back to your original world. Fail to make the top 90, you're permanently banned from the server, aka dead. But inside this crazy arena, you can loot legendary items. Jin-sun's gamer brain clicked. This is literally his favorite game. But there was one huge glitch. The NPCs here were monstrously overpowered. Was he the only squishy human in the lobby? Dream or not, dying sounds like a terrible idea. Hey you. A hulking brute barks at him, demanding to know his faction. Jin-sun ignores him, making the meathead absolutely blow a gasket. But right then, the giant drop timer ticked down. With 2 seconds left, the brute yells, "Are you smiling, you psycho?" Heck yeah. If this is a lucid dream, he's gonna enjoy the ride. Smirking, Jin-sun points a finger. I know the meta, buddy. I'll completely wipe the floor with you noobs. Boom. The match officially began. Everyone was yeeted from the sky like screaming meteors. Half the lobby just hot dropped straight down. Sweaty players rushing for the high-tier loot zones. But Jin-sun's a tactical genius. He prefers the cowardly safe approach, gliding toward an isolated compound. The system shouted to descend. He cratered into the dirt with a massive thud. The realism was totally making him nauseous. Freezing in place, he tried not to throw up. Motion sickness is real, guys. He blindly stumbled into a nearby house. Snap. A terrifying noise. Idiot. He forgot to check his blind spots on the landing. He desperately sprinted to the house. If a sky-dropping mage landed nearby, he was absolutely cooked without a weapon. He slammed the door shut, gasping for air like a desperate reality show contestant. Mocking that giant dude earlier, huge mistake. Was the big guy hunting him down? He peeked outside. Nope, just the wind howling. Breathing a sigh of relief, he finally started scavenging. Tossing the place upside down, he suddenly tripped over a massive, beastly crossbow. And wow, the item description wasn't lying. This thing weighed a ton. Snatching up some ammo, combat knowledge instantly flooded his brain. Please. For a seasoned Korean army vet, this was child's play. He pulled the trigger, and boom. The bolt fired off like a literal missile. This wasn't just a bow. It was a handheld tank. If he mastered this baby, he'd be totally unstoppable. After flipping the rest of the house and finding absolutely nothing, he packed up to raid the next building. The goal: hoard everything before meeting another player. He cracked the door open, scanning for targets. Coast clear, he kept snooping until hitting the jackpot. A magical healing scroll. Just tear it, and boom, instant health. Totally overpowered, now he just needed a backpack. Turning around, something glowing caught his eye. A martial arts manual, the Black Star Chi Palms. He instantly tapped to learn it. The book levitated, shredded itself to glowing dust, and absorbed into his brain. Looking down, his soft gamer hands were suddenly calloused, like a grandmaster who'd punched rocks for decades. Grabbing a random fork from the table, he casually tossed it. Bang, it shot out like a sniper bullet. Wait. Learning martial arts is this ridiculously easy? The author really just gave him plot armor, smirking. Our hero yanked the fork from the wall, feeling like a total boss. Since martial arts existed, magical skill books had to be out there too. This was basically a rogue-like game. Having stripped the house clean, he moved out. The sun had set, and after a long day of hardcore hoarding, our guy desperately needed a safe zone. But then, a glaring anomaly caught his eye in the darkness. One house was completely lit up. Option A, a super rare item was shining inside. Option B, some arrogant player had already claimed it. With zero clue about the enemy's power level, he analyzed the situation. Whoever left the lights on was either a god-tier veteran or a complete idiot. Peeking inside, the first floor was totally deserted. The target had to be upstairs, gripping his heavy crossbow. And trusting his new Dark Star skill, he hyped himself up. Even against a pro, he had a fighting chance. Sweating buckets, he crept up the stairs like a ninja. Crossbow raised, eyes locked, ready to blast whatever moved. Then he saw it. The glowing object. It was literally just a desk lamp. Was this a highly sophisticated trap? Right next to the lamp stood an ominous closed door. Gulping nervously, he debated running away, but finally kicked the door wide open. He scanned the room. Nothing. Not a single soul. After checking the corners, just to be absolutely sure, he face-planted onto the floor. He had stressed himself out over literally nothing. Still, surviving his own imaginary enemy was a huge relief. Dusting himself off, he rummaged through a desk drawer. Jackpot. A magical ring that boosted his strength stat by 20 whole points. Those were some incredibly juicy numbers, so the marksman eagerly slipped the jewelry onto his finger. The buff hit him instantly. His heavy, exhausted body suddenly felt light as a feather, and that massive crossbow, it now felt like holding a plastic toy. Thrilled by this sudden glow-up, he needed to see the hard proof. He eagerly summoned his status window. Sure, his base stats were absolute garbage, but there it was. Thanks to that absurd manual, the system now classed him as a literal martial artist. Considering he dropped in completely broke, he was extremely hyped with this loot. Feeling invincible, he strutted back down to sweep the ground floor. Boom. Another treasure secured. He dug up a second magical ring, hiding in the dusty living room. The instructions were simple. Hold it, think about a pocket dimension, and tap. Just like magic, a digital inventory screen popped up. It wasn't infinite, but this subspace storage was an absolute lifesaver. He immediately dumped all his heavy gear inside. Walking around hands-free felt ridiculously good. Honestly, if he could take this magical cheat ring back to the real world, life would be so easy. He daydreamed about flexing his new superpowers and infinite pockets back on modern Earth. Shaking it off, he checked the system's global kill feed to see if the bloodbath had started. Scrolling through the grim updates, the survival counter stared back at him. 99 players remained. The deadly game was officially on. Our guy grinded until 90 players remained. Soon after looting the entire house like a greedy goblin, he found consumables and hidden weapons that perfectly matched his Dark Star skill. Now he faced the ultimate gamer dilemma: camp here like a coward, or explore like an absolute boss. Obviously, those lunatics from the lobby were definitely prowling in the dark, but since throwing hands was the only way to hit the top 10, our boy craved that sweet, sweet loot. Figuring fewer tryhards would be wandering around at night, So-woon decided to hit one last spot. Mid-walk, he realized his strength ring was completely broken. 0 stamina drain, even after marathon running. But the developers were totally sadistic. 0 fatigue didn't mean 0 hunger. His stomach was basically throwing a massive tantrum. Finding no snacks nearby, he prayed for a random house fridge to raid. But right as he opened his map, a massive roar shattered the silence. His soul nearly left his body, realizing something huge was breathing right behind him. He instantly scrambled behind a tree, sweating buckets since his radar picked up absolutely nothing. Peeking out, his jaw hit the floor. He knew that ugly mug from anywhere. A literal werewolf was staring him down. Panic overloaded Siwon's brain as he sprinted for his life, dodging swipe after deadly swipe. Those oversized razor claws sliced through solid wood like wet paper. Wait, 2 of them? This was supposed to be a player versus player game, not a monster hunting simulator. If he knew furry death machines roamed outside, he'd have stayed in bed. As a former top 10 rogue player, dying to a random non-player character was the ultimate humiliation. Just then, a glorious house appeared ahead. Siwon hit the turbo button, running faster than ever before. He dove inside, slamming the door shut. But his luck was absolute trash. The furry twins followed him right to the porch. Thinking fast, he peeked through the window. They were sniffing like crazy. Of course they were tracking his gamer scent. Realizing stealth was useless, he went full aggressive mode. He locked his crossbow onto the furry trespassers, lined up the perfect headshot, and pulled the trigger. Bam, direct hit. He totally sniped that oversized dog right in the dome. 1 down, 1 to go. Thanks to his broken strength, stats reloading felt incredibly light. But just as he readied round 2, his blood ran cold. He was spotted. The second wolf lunged. He desperately threw himself backward to dodge the incoming meat grinder claw. A glancing hit scratched his handsome face. The beast crashed inside, fully intending to turn him into dog food. Our guy fired a desperate shot, but the monster literally blocked the arrow with its bare arm. Just like that, his ranged advantage was instantly gone. He was totally cornered. But right before becoming a midnight snack, he accessed his subspace inventory. A shiny throwing knife materialized, activating Dark Star Ambush. He lunged forward, stabbing straight through the beast's massive chest. The strike was so violently overpowered, the blade completely bent against the wall. Jin Si-woon refused to die to a basic mob. Miraculously, our boy clutched the craziest 1 versus 2 fight ever. Looking at the corpses, he couldn't believe he was still breathing. His legs turned to absolute jelly. Without those lucky daggers, he would be resting in pieces right now. Suddenly, a shiny loot pouch caught his eye. A classic monster drop. Pulling out jerky and water, he laughed. So he could literally hunt for his dinner. Munching aggressively on his well-earned beef jerky, he looted the house and struck pure gold. A chest plate that looked like a tactical vest. It was way too big for his noodle arms at first, but magically shrunk to fit perfectly. The system dinged. Superior Orichalcum Cuirass acquired. Massive magic resistance against fire and wind. Siwon was grinning like an absolute idiot watching his survival stats skyrocket. Feeling incredibly lucky, he searched for more hidden treasures. Wait, what was this? His hand hit something completely invisible. A hidden piece of fabric. Wrapping it around himself, the system flashed. Mantle of the Gods. Absolute shadow camouflage when standing still. With this insanely overpowered loot, he was basically an invisible ninja. Him totally off the radar from snooping magic. Honestly, our guy was grinning like an absolute fool. This overpowered gear was a literal cheat code. He could finally skulk around in the dark without getting ganked. Naturally, he took his shiny new toy for a test drive, feeling ready to absolutely conquer the world. Finding that creepy cabin in the woods was a total jackpot, dropping top-tier loot on just day 2. As night fell, Siwon started thinking he was the only player in this entire server, probably because he spawned in the absolute middle of nowhere. But cue the horror movie sound effects. Someone was screaming. A guy was sprinting for his life, bleeding out. Scarface here was seriously kicking himself for not equipping his trump card in time. Meanwhile, our cowardly hero just sat back in his invisible snuggie munching popcorn from the bushes. The bleeding guy was super salty about running into a magic user. Judging by his panicky running, the scarred dude was definitely a massive noob. Siwon realized he could totally one-shot this guy. But then, Siwon had a mini existential crisis. He tried to remind himself, this is just a game, bro. No real murder here. Right on cue, boom, a massive fireball zoomed past our hero's face. The poor scarred guy completely froze like a deer in headlights. And zap, he was instantly deep-fried into extra crispy bacon. Siwon panicked, thinking he just witnessed a literal homicide. But then things got weird. He was finally convinced this was just a crazy game. Why? Because the dead guy literally turned into a treasure box. At that exact second, the sweaty mage strutted past him, bragging about frying a lowly stable boy who tried to swipe his loot. Mr. Red Hat actually complained that his target didn't just stand still and die quietly, while Seun was practically worshipping his invisibility cloak. It was the ultimate camp and hide tool, completely fooling the psycho mage right next to him. The guy literally named Karen yelled that the victim should feel super blessed to get roasted by his flames. Then he totally ignored everything to go loot the shiny chest. Seun swallowed hard. He could have easily been obliterated by this fiery Karen, since he was just a squishy level 1 nobody too. This brutal reality check gave him a serious wake-up slap. Hesitate and you become barbecue, and so he locked in. Seun was officially ready to play dirty to survive. Down below, Karen was giggling like a schoolgirl over his stolen loot. But his happy dance was rudely interrupted. Smack. Something fast and pointy violently crashed into his magic shield. Karen suddenly realized his dramatic screaming had totally blown his cover, inviting a third party to the chat. Our sneaky sniper took a second shot, and Mr. Magic was too slow to dodge. At this rate, that fragile glass shield was going to crack wide open. While our invisible camper chilled comfortably in the shadows, the fireball-throwing Karen started sweating bullets. He blindly guessed where the shots were coming from, chucking flames at the trees like a maniac. The spicy wizard threw a massive tantrum, crying for the sniper to come fight fairly. The universe's hilarious response: a flying knife right to the face. It zoomed straight at the clueless mage, and before he could even blink, his fancy barrier shattered like cheap glass. Completely naked to attacks, Karen shrieked in absolute terror, begging the invisible troll to show himself. But Seun wasn't stupid enough to leave his camping spot. Desperate, the pyromaniac tried charging up his ultimate attack. But oops, an arrow just totally went straight through his skull. He didn't even get to finish his dramatic monologue before getting headshot by the bush camper. Winner winner chicken dinner for Seun. The dead tryhard instantly vanished, dropping another sweet loot box, paranoia kicking in. Seun decided to go full loot goblin mode, grabbing everything before dipping out. And wow, this dead guy was loaded. He scored a shiny medium healing scroll. He also snagged a pure gold chain belonging to some stuck-up magic council, which was probably useless, but hey, free bling. But then his eyes locked onto the real prize. It was a legendary circle stone, an item that literally hardwires a magic core straight into your heart for endless mana. Not only that, it basically uploads magic spells right into your brain. Our sneaky guy realized he could class change into a wizard on the spot. Suddenly it clicked. This was the ultra-rare item the first dead guy forgot to use before turning into barbecue. Seun felt a tiny bit bad for the noob, but happily stole his upgrades anyway. Shoving all the loot into his inventory, he scurried off. Now, our invisible menace just needed to find a safe little corner to pop his new power-up. After wandering a bit, he found an empty shack. Once the doors were locked, he instantly smashed the circle stone to absorb it. The system basically told him to just sit back and relax since the magic would It would take 3 whole hours and cause minor discomfort. Yeah, right, the system's definition of minor was completely busted. Seo Woon bit back his screams through 3 hellish hours of absolute agony. That scammer system totally lied to our guy, nearly losing his mind to the torture. He finally realized magic was way harder to master than throwing punches. Opening his status window, the exhausted survivor cracked a huge smile, seeing he actually unlocked a mana stat. Curious about the player count. Since 2 guys just died spectacularly, right in front of his face, our hidden sniper checked the leaderboard, and his jaw dropped. Wait, what? Over half the players were already wiped out. Scanning the blood-soaked kill log, he spotted one name popping up like spam. Dozens had been slaughtered by some psycho named Nam Sagwang. Just moments earlier, a random player was sprinting for his dear life. Sadly for him, his pursuer treated this like a twisted game of tag. And then, the poor guy tripped over a literal rock. Face planting directly into the dirt, completely defenseless, the pathetic swordsman started crying, begging just to survive in the top 90. Desperate to not lose his rank, he pleaded from the very bottom of his cowardly heart. But boom, his head was instantly popped like a balloon by the server's most infamous celebrity killer. With maximum disrespect, Nam Sagwang casually strolled away, leaving behind absolutely nothing but the shiny loot chest of his newest victim. By day 3 of this nightmare game, 54 poor souls were sent packing in a single bloody night. Our sensible hero immediately decided avoiding Nam Sagwang was top priority. But wait, his big brain kicked in. What if he rode this psycho's wave straight into the top 10? The greedy gamer instantly daydreamed about the juicy rewards for ranking high, drooling over the idea of smuggling magical items back into the real world. Slapping his cheeks, he woke up from his loot fantasy. Knowing there was a literal serial killer on the loose, he packed his bags to ditch the area. But first, our boy wanted to test out that sweet magic skill book he scored yesterday. Time to see if his newly awakened mana actually worked. He pulled out the Windball Tome, a spell that spits out breezy spheres based on the user's magic stat. Smashing the learn button without a second thought, he waited. Nothing happened. Until suddenly, Ancient incantations flooded his brain. Feeling like an absolute wizard, he dramatically chanted the magic words to fire the spell. Poof! 4 pathetic marble-sized wind spheres appeared. Talk about a letdown. Feeling incredibly scammed by the tiny marbles, he chucked them away in disgust. Kaboom! They violently exploded with hurricane force. These puny little specks actually packed a nuclear punch. Super useful, right? Well, yeah, except he just burned all his mana on one accidental spell and instantly collapsed from exhaustion. Meanwhile, the map's safe zone started shrinking like crazy. So our protagonist kept hugging the border to greedily farm more items. Seo-woon figured he wouldn't bump into anyone since the player count was so low, hoping for a peaceful loot fest before the barrier closed. But surprise, surprise. Little did our loot goblin know someone was creeping on him from above, watching his every single move. The mysterious watcher was definitely amused by this weirdo and decided to follow along. Fast forward half a day, our hero stumbled upon some houses, but the sight made him freeze. The absolute sea of loot chests meant a massive bloodbath had just gone down in this exact spot. His gamer instincts instantly screamed danger. In full panic mode, he readied his brand new explosive wind balls, blasting the nearest suspicious door just in case. At first, our paranoid hero tried to chill out, thinking he was just jumping at shadows. But then, a very juicy detail caught his eye. Upon peeking inside the ruined shack, he spotted fresh blood trails. Bingo. Some heavily wounded player was hiding inside Seo-woon. Sweat dropped, knowing the guy must be skilled to survive this long, but the loot temptation was so incredibly real. Ultimately, his cowardice won out, and he swiftly noped right out of there, deciding survival beats shiny boxes any day. After a long, tense silence, making absolute sure our fleeing hero was gone, the hidden player finally crawled out. He had cloaked himself just in time, narrowly avoiding getting spotted. The sneaky camper grumbled in annoyance, thinking our puny hero would have been free experience points. Shrugging it off, he greedily reached for the leftover loot chests. But plot twist, a random arrow flew out of nowhere and instantly sniped his skull. The camper barely processed the ultimate bamboozle before dropping dead. Gotcha. Our big-brain sniper's fake retreat trap worked flawlessly. Grinning like a maniac, Seo-woon happily swooped in to loot the chests, ready to scurry to the map's edge. But right then, a sudden voice behind him nearly gave him a heart attack, saying, skilled he was at surviving. Seo-woon completely panicked, sweating bullets at getting ambushed. But the creepy grandpa totally chilled out, saying he just wanted a little chat. When asked for his gamer tag, the geezer dropped a lore bomb. Names were useless since they came from totally different dimensions. This was Seo-woon's very first time meeting an actual isekai grandpa in Cloud. As the sun finally dipped, the old man asked if our boy was a returning player. He confessed he had been totally stream sniping Seo-woon's fast leveling from the bushes, asking if he knew this was all a simulation. Seo-woon, still horrified that he missed this ninja grandpa, stuttered that he was a total noob here, but his world had tons of games like this. The master, with no name, had his mind blown. He realized this trembling kid was legit from another universe. Seo-woon and the boomer then realized Night 3 had officially dropped. When quizzed about the size of Earth's moon, our clueless hero realized the moon here was absolutely massive. As it turned out, the moon in both their home worlds was way tinier than this giant rock. The Murim grandpa explained he was super curious about our hero, who was currently freaking out about random mob spawns. Thus, the nameless boomer suggested finding a safe zone for their little podcast. While our sweaty hero demanded a completely unbreakable promise of no player killing, the old man just ignored him, ordering absolute silence at all times. He then went full flying squirrel, leaping through trees and whispering that going stealth mode was their only hope. But Grandpa's agility stat was way too high for our nerdy main character. And just like that, the duo teleported to a new spot. Our boy had zero clue how much this random encounter would absolutely break his whole life. Later, chilling in a super high tree, a terrified Seo-woon hugged the branches and explained how his modern world invented virtual reality just like this. Seo-woon started sweating, wondering how long this stalker had been watching him farm experience points. Grandpa then casually read our hero's mind, explaining that they had literally spawned at the exact same point. At first, the old man just wanted to go offline and enjoy the match in peace, but he ended up spectating our hero, dying to know how they got dragged into this crazy server. Learning the modern kid was equally clueless. The old man tilted hard, confused since Seo-woon claimed his world had similar games. Our boy awkwardly clarified he meant innocent video games where nobody actually gets stabbed, and the admin's motives were a total mystery. The old man quickly grasped the concept, but to his shock, Seo-woon hyped this death game up as the ultimate jackpot. According to our gamer, there's no permadeath here, and the top 10 survivors get to keep all their overpowered loot. The old man finally understood. The kid meant all the crazy gear, the martial arts, and the busted skills acquired. Sawun whined that unlike this overpowered grandpa who lived on easy mode, magic powers could actually cure his pathetic real life. It was painfully obvious the old man was a legendary martial arts master, while our desperate guy just wanted some cheat skills for an easy life. Sawun frantically shushed the nameless master when the old guy started dying of laughter. As the chat dragged on, they realized neither of them even knew how to open the minimap. With that, Sawun and the Muram master pulled an all-nighter, as our geek explained the entire game interface from scratch. When morning finally dropped, they hopped out of the tree. The old man actually apologized for hogging the main character's time, but Sawun, eating up the Muram lore, didn't mind at all, since sticking by the overpowered grandpa was literally the safest carry ever. Grateful for the gaming tutorial, the old man asked how he could possibly repay the kid. Hearing this, our greedy hero instantly demanded to learn those legendary martial arts. It was the perfect cheat code to survive until the end. Pondering for a second, the absolute master totally crushed the noob's dreams by claiming it would be super complicated. Grandpa warned Sawun he would literally have to face certain death, and so, the master asked if this sweaty gamer was truly ready to risk it all. The old man stressed that power leveling like this came with a brutal, fatal price tag. But as he asked if the kid was ready, Sawun just smirked. Realizing permadeath isn't a thing here, the insane training method suddenly became completely viable, hyping our hero up. Sawun vibrated with excitement as Grandpa revealed there might be a hope for the kid. The Grandmaster finally checked his new disciple's internal energy, but the results were absolutely pathetic. He was genuinely speechless. The boy's aura was so unbelievably weak, even a stray dog packed more punch. Realizing Sawun hailed from a world completely devoid of magic, the old man ordered him to sit cross-legged. The stage was finally set. The master dropped a casual warning. The kid was about to taste mind-shattering agony, and he wouldn't even be able to twitch. If he couldn't handle the hellish torment, instant death. Our hero's senses were dialed up to the absolute max. The very air sliced his skin, like invisible blades, while his lungs inhaled pure lava. Suddenly, a bizarre wave of energy crashed into our protagonist. Sawun began howling in sheer, unadulterated torment. The pain was so god-awful, the poor guy practically saw the Grim Reaper waving at him. But just as he brushed death's door, a breakthrough, drowning in that hypersensitive torture, he had an out-of-body experience, watching himself and the old man from above. While his soul was screaming bloody murder, his physical body sat dead still like a statue. And just like that, the absolute nightmare was over. Surviving that torture session left our hero wanting to hurl his lunch. The master calmly looked at the trembling survivor. Beating this deadly trial proved he actually had some monstrous potential hidden away. Everything was about to change. The old man had completely rewired the kid's internal flow of ki. He casually mentioned how impatient his student was to get overpowered, ripping off a piece of his own soul to forge an energy-absorbing gate. Normal martial artists sip ki through basic breathing exercises, but this crazy new soul gate was a total game-changer. The master dropped some deep philosophy. The body, mind, and spirit are glued together by pure, vital energy. He then quizzed his battered student. What exactly happens to that energy? When a person kicks the bucket, the rookie guessed it just vanishes with the corpse. Nope, the master smirked. That life force scatters into the wind, just like a water balloon exploding into a million drops upon hitting the pavement. It naturally cycles back into the earth to feed the ecosystem. But some greedy lunatics thought recycling was a total waste. They started slaughtering folks just to suck up their life force. However, stealing foreign energy is like drinking poison. Most thieves either lost their minds or exploded from ki deviation. And guess what? The old man just gifted our hero that exact same demonic power. Sawun broke into a cold sweat, realizing he was the guinea pig, but the master laughed it off. Thanks to his shiny new soul gate, he wouldn't explode like those other losers. Plus, his horribly weak, ki-deprived body was actually the perfect empty trash can to hold all that stolen power. Sawun instantly connected the dots. This sketchy, murderous martial art was absolutely tailor-made for this hellish death game. He remembered seeing the lingering auras of dead players floating around like free loot. Sure, sucking the life out of corpses screams villain origin story, but in this brutal survival zone, it was the ultimate farming tool. The Grandmaster promised, if the kid just kept sending fools to the respawn screen, he would become an unstoppable raid boss by the finale. Having dropped that glorious cheat code, the master prepared to bounce. But before he could vanish, Jin Sawun desperately yelled out, demanding his overpowered sponsor's name. Striking an epic pose, he revealed himself as the serene immortal Zhang Do-chin, and the name of this game-breaking demonic hack, the unrestrained inner energy technique. The hero bowed deeply, swearing a massive debt to the legend, while the immortal just chuckled, telling the noob to keep grinding those levels. With a final glance at the player's ridiculously convenient minimap, the old martial god smiled. He promised our boy he would be watching his progress with popcorn. And poof, the old geezer vanished into thin air. Our sneaky sniper wasn't exactly shocked by the teleportation trick, but it definitely made him jealous. Why couldn't he get a cheat skill for super speed too? Muttering under his breath, Se-woon refocused on surviving the game and started his trek back to the safe zone borders. The old master had dragged him all the way to the center in the blink of an eye. But without a fast travel point, the poor guy had to hike for 12 miserable hours across the massive map. Exhausted, our player finally spotted a faintly lit cabin. This screamed two things. Either it was a blatant trap or some absolute newbie was practically begging to get ganked. Too tired to care, Se-woon crept forward, ready to conquer the base. Slipping inside like a ninja, he held his breath, dodging floorboards like laser beams to avoid blowing his cover. Finding it empty, he sighed in massive relief and snuffed out the lantern. But honestly, he was incredibly salty. Forget legendary loot. This lame safe house only had stale snacks and a pathetic beginner's healing scroll. Woon suddenly remembered he pulled an all-nighter chatting with the Ghost Master, so his brain was basically mush. He desperately needed some beauty sleep. Our exhausted gamer finally crashed hard. But alas, day 5 of this nightmare rolled around way too fast. While our main character was happily drooling in dreamland, the dreaded sound of heavy footsteps shattered the peace. He snapped awake, panic spiking at a stranger's voice. A wild enemy had stumbled right into his cozy little hideout. Still half asleep and incredibly cranky, Se-woon scrambled for his trusty crossbow. Just as the rude intruder kicked the door open, looking for a free hotel, he was greeted by a very nasty surprise. Standing there, our grumpy hero had his weapon aimed squarely at the guy's face. He fired instantly, but this samurai was absurdly fast, slicing the bolt right out of the air. Realizing this real estate was already taken, the swordsman threw a massive tantrum. Not missing a beat, our boy unleashed a deadly rain of throwing daggers. The crazy samurai just bulldozed straight through, whining loudly about the sheer disrespect of hidden weapons. But then Smack Se-woon snatched him right by the scalp. He slammed the complaining swordsman face first into the dirt with absolute zero hesitation. A swift kick sent the katana flying. You simply do not interrupt a gamer's precious beauty sleep. Now pathetically begging for mercy, the intruder handed over every single piece of loot he owned, crying about how ridiculously unfair this survival game was. But our ruthless sniper had zero sympathy, instantly delivering a swift blade to the skull. Game over. And just like that, the so-called warrior Xiaolong got completely deleted by Jin Se-woon, who was just trying to survive in peace. After securing his latest shiny loot box, he spotted something incredibly weird. The dead guy's chest was glowing with a bizarre green aura. Bingo. He instantly realized this was that mystical energy the old Ghost Master wouldn't shut up about. Even the fresh blood on his hands was dripping with it. Our hero had officially made contact with genuine chi. Instantly, his body became a human vacuum cleaner. Se-woon felt an absolutely ridiculous surge of explosive power rushing through his veins. Just slurping up one dude's vital energy made him feel like he could jump over the moon. Bursting with new muscle, he frantically pulled up his status window. Jackpot. He unlocked a shiny new internal energy stat, bagging a sweet 20 points right off the bat. Suddenly, that spooky old ghost was his favorite person, ever fueling his greedy desire to snatch more free power. Feeling confident, our survivalist casually peeked at the active player count. But the kill log nearly gave him a heart attack. By day 5, a staggering 76 poor souls had already met their maker. Ding, the screen flashed again right before his very eyes. The survivor count violently dropped from 24 down to 23. That absolute monster Nam Sagwang just crushed another random scrub named Calvert. Cut to the other side of the map, where another victim was biting the dust, cursing his killer's name with his dying breath. Poof, nothing remained of the guy except a sad little loot box. Nam Sagwang simply clicked his tongue, incredibly bored, because his ambushers kept turning out to be absolute trash-tier newbies. Thoroughly annoyed by the lack of a real fight, the martial artist checked the leaderboards. Only 22 players left. But wait, reading the log, our main character's username definitely triggered a spark of memory in that crazy killer's brain. Back to our hero, who sensibly decided that running far away from Nam Sagwang was the best life choice ever. He knew he'd be instantly folded like a lawn chair in a fight, especially since he just struggled against a random nobody. So he aggressively vacuumed up the house's loot before the scary blue zone closed in. Examining the dead samurai's pathetic garbage tier items, he realized he completely got lucky with that win. If that guy had decent gear, it would have been game over. So our boy decided to camp in the bushes until the player count dropped to single digits. Fast forward 7 boring days, Se-woon finally realized his beginner's luck was completely spent. A whole week of hunting yielded absolutely nothing but bottom-of-the-barrel trash loot. But hey, thanks to his brilliant strategy of desperately hugging the map's edge like a scared rat, he successfully avoided getting murdered by other high-level players. By day 12, he was utterly sick of chewing on tough, flavorless jerky. Staring down a massive wild bear, he noted that exactly 20 surviving players remained. Reaching his hand just an inch past the safe zone barrier, it was instantly zapped numb. Realizing he'd be totally paralyzed outside the zone, he correctly guessed that everyone else was camping like cowards too. Well, everyone except that bloodthirsty lunatic who was actively farming kills. Suddenly our camper spotted some prime entertainment. A massive dust cloud was violently erupting in the distance. Se-woon grinned instantly, deducing a spectacular boss raid was happening. Yep, the madman was actually panting. A giant squad of top-tier pros had teamed up in a desperate Avengers Assemble moment to hunt Nam Sa-gwang. Yet the monster just laughed at their pathetic teamwork. Gang up on a little kid, but hey, it saved him the trouble of hunting them. The crazy brat Nam Sa-gwang then asked the mob of losers if they brought their body bags to this fight, and without missing a beat, the psycho kid launched into the sky. The clueless players thought he was running away like a coward. But sadly, the kid just grabbed a guy's skull and popped it like a cheap water balloon. Splat. This left the entire mob absolutely pants-peeing, terrified. Nam Sa-gwang casually picked his next victim. In a literal blink, the absolute madman started shredding through the crowd like a blender. You couldn't even call this a real fight. Honestly, you could only call it an all-you-can-eat massacre, with players getting swatted like annoying flies left and right. The system kill log went totally nuts. At this rate, Nam Sa-gwang was going to win this whole deathmatch solo. Meanwhile, our poor protagonist just watched sweating bullets as this demon kid aggressively farmed his kill-death ratio. Our hero was seriously convinced this boss-level brat had to be using aimbot or cheat codes. In the end, the useless players were just free experience for the monster kid. But honestly, Nam Sa-gwang was just super annoyed that he was forced to get his clothes ruined by sticky enemy blood. Gross. So, the neat freak psycho decided to stroll off and find somewhere to take a nice bath. Fast forward a bit, the sun went down. Suddenly, a mysterious figure rolled up. This guy with fancy pointy ears spotted his dead guildmate's bloody staff. Cue the dramatic music. The elf swore on his very life to avenge his fallen buddy Elizabeth. 89 out of 100 players were already toast. Our hiding hero just needed literally one more loser to drop dead to hit the top 10. But he desperately needed way better loot if he ever wanted to survive breathing the same air as the overpowered Nam Sa-gwang. Luckily, our boy spotted a massive mansion that was getting swallowed by the red zone tomorrow morning. So he sprinted inside, praying it was a safe zone for a little peaceful solo farming. Se-woon peeked through the door like a sneaky ninja. Holy jackpot, our hero's jaw dropped at the ultra-luxurious interior. Forget the trashy dirt huts from earlier, this place was straight out of a billionaire's catalog. Then he miraculously tripped over legendary royal armor. The catch, it needed 110 strength. Se-woon, flexing his absolutely pathetic noodle arm strength of 30, cried manly tears and left the god-tier loot behind. But as he kept snooping around, he hit another jackpot. The system blessed our weakling with an elixir of insight, a magical cheat drink to boost his mana pool, refreshing every 3 hours. He was drooling over the drop rates, wondering if this spooky abandoned mansion was actually a giant treasure chest. Bingo. He even snagged a super rare skill book called Secrets of the Unbreakable Fist. Just as our sniper started planning his cowardly camping strategy to safely use his new loot, his foot smacked against a hollow floorboard. Hello, hidden dungeon. Se-woon had literally stumbled right onto the secret dimensional warehouse entrance. But before he could even celebrate, boom, a massive explosion rocked the house. Before our panicked hero could even process his bad luck, his survival instincts kicked in, and he yeeted himself straight out the window. He was having a really tough time keeping up with the chaos. Luckily, the blast knocked his butt right into some comfy bushes. And just like that, Se-woon was doing his best Bush Wookiee impression. He was scratching his head because he swore nobody was tailing him. But then he peeked through the leaves and gasped. He recognized the flashy magic user floating right there as the snooty elf from the waiting lobby. The mage smirked, admitting the psycho kid's insane kill streak wasn't just luck, since he somehow tanked that giant explosion. Floating like a smug balloon, the elf swore he would carve the name Nam Sa-gwang onto a tombstone. But the psycho kid just yawned, telling the pointy-eared freak to stop monologuing. Nam Sa-gwang dared this floating target practice to throw hands already since he had a busy schedule. The elf scoffed, promising the brat wouldn't be acting so cocky once he tasted real magic. The crazy kid was practically giggling at the free entertainment. Meanwhile, poor Se-woon was picking his jaw off the dirt, realizing the absolute server-wiping monster, Nam Sa-gwang, was literally just a kid. The elf mage was totally fed up with the brat's disrespect and decided to serve some instant karma. Our hiding hero had zero choice but to eat popcorn and watch these two overpowered freaks clash. Bam! The elf named Escrow straight up summoned lightning. He started throwing literal thunderbolts like he was Zeus on a bad day. And just like that, the martial arts maniac had to dance around the orbital strikes raining from the sky. Escrow was getting super salty that the kid kept perfectly dodging his fancy magic, screaming at him to fight back like he did with Elizabeth. Honestly, it was the first time in his crazy life that the demon brat met someone with actual firepower. The floating elf found his blood pressure rising, incredibly triggered by this slippery kid, so he decided to stop playing nice and charge up his ultimate game-ending move, going for the quick finish. Suddenly, a literal storm of lightning crashed down on our martial artist. Nam Sagong instantly knew one zap would send him straight to the lobby. Yet this absolute madman kept his cool, dodging the deadly disco of thunderbolts like a pro. Gathering his strength, he launched himself into the stratosphere. The flying mage nearly dropped his staff in shock. Somehow, our martial artist had completely closed the massive gap. Cocking his fist back, Nam prepared to deliver a one-way ticket to the afterlife. But the pointy-eared mage smugly declared his magic shield was basically indestructible. With a swift swing, he sliced the young fighter right in half. For a hot second, it looked like game over for our infamous player. But instead of bleeding, he just poofed into thin air. The mage had just styled on a fake clone. Meanwhile, our resident rat Siyun was munching popcorn in the shadows. He was absolutely flabbergasted that this elf could casually derail a freight train. Up in the sky, Escrow realized his radar was completely blank. His slippery opponent had totally dipped. Cursing at the clouds, the elf screamed, a dramatic villain vow to obliterate the young martial artist the next time they crossed paths. Meanwhile, that same martial artist was currently sprinting away like a total coward. Nam promised himself he would not get caught lacking next time. Next round, that mage was going down. But right now, his main priority was running away to take a much-needed nap. Down below, the victorious mage floated back to Earth to scan the battlefield. Hilariously, he completely missed our hero, hiding in his overpowered stealth blanket. Siyun happily realized that these two overpowered monsters would not be coming back here anytime soon. With the coast finally clear, our sneaky rat found exactly what he wanted. Standing before the dusty warehouse, Siyun was practically drooling, dreaming of legendary loot and game-breaking artifacts. The creepy stairs descended into total darkness. Since nobody else had looted this place yet, our brave little scavenger invited himself in. Thank goodness for that lamp he casually stole earlier, right? Reaching the basement, he proudly hung up his stolen light. But alas, it was just a giant pantry. Siyun wanted to cry. He expected epic weapons, not an all-you-can-eat buffet. However, his loudly rumbling stomach, completely sick of eating literal shoe leather jerky, was absolutely thrilled. 1 hour of aggressive chewing later, our hero patted his stuffed belly. Sure, as a true Korean, he desperately missed having a bowl of white rice. But beggars cannot be choosers. Burping happily, he pulled out that weird martial arts manual he found earlier. Reading the lore, he realized it was created by some total loser who just wanted to punch things really hard. Siyun felt totally scammed. But hey, just like the basement snacks, our zero-skill survivor could not afford to complain. Shrugging it off, our boy decided to chug his mystery elixir before throwing any practice punches. He hesitated for a second, having traumatic flashbacks to his last agonizing power-up experience. But his greed for gains took over, and he downed it like a champ. Immediately, his body reacted. He felt mana flowing through his veins, though it honestly felt like a leaky tap compared to his previous power-up. Still, the cheap juice paralyzed him completely for 3 agonizing hours. Eventually, his frozen muscles thawed out, and he could finally twitch his fingers. Sitting still for 3 hours is exhausting work, you know? Our Rat King, who literally hid in the woods for 7 days, was just glad those 2 overpowered freaks did not squash him. Yawning loudly, our hero simply went to sleep. What a wildly productive day. Boom, welcome to day 13. Stretching like a lazy cat, he popped open the warehouse lid. He casually noted the creeping death wall nearby, then checked the scoreboard. Holy cow, only 10 players were left alive. But looking closer, our hero noticed a hilarious detail in the system chat. That super kind grandpa he met earlier, he literally eliminated himself. Siyun guessed the crazy old master was probably trying some totally unhinged training routine. Knowing this twisted game that was honestly the most logical explanation, still, our hero felt a bit pathetic, realizing he only reached the top 10 because Grandpa rage quit. Suddenly, his stealth blanket brushed the danger zone. The Battle Royale circle was shrinking fast. Packing his snacks, our hero bolted before the red zone could eat him alive. Time to hit the road. His ultimate master plan, keep hiding and absolutely never fight anyone. For a squishy weakling like him, ratting was the only viable strategy to win. But suddenly, his spider sense went absolutely crazy. Siyun threw himself into the dirt just in time. A massive fireball literally roasted the air where his head used to be. Guard. Only one sparkly suspect came to mind when magic started flying. And bingo, his worst nightmare just became reality. Our boy Seo-woon was staring down a very annoyed, very pointy-eared great mage. The elf actually looked let down since his fancy radar pinged a random nobody with a gun instead of the crazy martial arts guy. Honestly, this was totally Seo-woon's fault. He got so drunk on his shiny new speed buff that he completely forgot to check his blind spots. The snooty elf demanded to know where that lunatic Namsagwang was hiding. He threw in a classic villain threat, promising to vaporize our marksman if he played dumb. But joke is on him, the guy he was hunting was literally breathing down his neck. The mage graciously offered to spare the newbie's life in exchange for the juicy intel. Of course, our sweating hero swore up and down that he had zero clue where the madman was. But just as things looked grim, he witnessed a total plot twist. Right before the elf could hit delete on his life, a shadow dropped from the sky. Bam! The crazy dude slammed face first into the great mage's shiny magic shield. Escrow was completely caught off guard. Namsagwang, looking fresh out of a health spa, cheekily pointed out that the elf's mana tank was running on empty. Our main character just stood there, jaw on the floor, watching this martial arts freak spawn out of thin air. Without missing a beat, Namsagwang decided to finish the job and kapow. His bare fist literally shattered the magic barrier like cheap glass. Escrow scoffed at the musclehead, bragging that mere punches were basically tickles to him until he suddenly started coughing up blood. Namsagwang smirked and asked if the elf had ever heard of aura blades. He casually flexed a legendary technique, noting that almost nobody could master it, and honestly, he was pretty annoyed he even had to use it here. He told Escrow he should feel like a very important person for being the very first guinea pig to taste this attack. And slice. The arrogant elf's vocal cords were instantly deleted. Good luck casting those fancy spells when you cannot even whisper a single syllable. Honestly, according to the martial arts psycho, this elf could have coasted to the endgame if he had just minded his own business. Talk about absolute plot armor for our weak hero. With the two heavyweights throwing hands, he decided it was the perfect time to nope right out of there. But unfortunately, Seo-woon was way too captivated by the flashy beatdown to actually move his feet. Yikes. The great mage just caught a massive stab to the gut. It was officially game over, leaving him entirely at the mercy of the overpowered brawler. Watching this supposedly untouchable magic user get treated like a punching bag was bizarrely entertaining. But instead of running away, our protagonist's brain completely short-circuited and locked onto one extremely greedy thought. Jin Seo-woon actually started doing the math on how insanely overpowered he would get if he simply stole the experience points from both of these raid bosses. His absolute thirst for leveling up was making him dangerously stupid. Meanwhile, Namsagwang was busy roasting the defeated elf, laughing hysterically because the guy could not even spit out a cool final villain monologue. Escrow, who was literally missing his throat, just resorted to using telepathy to spam the martial artist's brain about his beloved student Elizabeth, who had tragically died. The rambling mage cried about how his star pupil got completely shunned by society and the Magic Academy just for being a girl. But while the elf was trauma dumping, Namsagwang rudely interrupted, claiming she must have been cross-dressing because he definitely did not remember punching a chick. With that awkward detail out of the way, the stage was set for absolute chaos. The cocky martial artist totally missed the warning signs from the dying elf, but our cowardly hero's danger senses were tingling like crazy. Seo-woon glanced up and, oh boy. The sky was suddenly glowing bright orange. A literal blazing meteor was dropping straight onto their server. The martial artist was totally baffled since he thought casting was impossible without vocal cords. Well, Escrow smugly revealed that when you are a top-tier mage, you can simply cash in your own health and mana bars to bypass the chant and drop an actual Armageddon. Panic ensued, and the previously fearless martial artist started sprinting for his life like a scared toddler. Realizing the elf was going full kamikaze, our greedy hero joined the track meet, deeply regretting his ridiculous lust for free stats. In his final moments, Escrow just smiled, ready to see Elizabeth in the afterlife, peacefully logging out of the mortal realm. The stubborn mage vanished into pixels, dropping a ridiculously shiny loot box right on the battlefield. And then boom, the meteor finally hit the server with a glorious map-wiping explosion. Miles away, another elf spotted the mushroom cloud. He sweated nervously, knowing there was only one unhinged player in the entire game who would drop a nuke like that. Back at Ground Zero, our main character was looking like a toasted marshmallow because he stuck around too long, window shopping for a free level up. But dying here? Absolutely not. Seo-woon furiously spammed every single healing scroll in his inventory just to glue his health bar back together. Thanks to a ridiculously overpowered magic potion, he managed to dodge the game over screen. Even though the potion fixed his flesh, the phantom pain was totally unbearable, so our dramatic marksman decided to just chug down even more heals. Scrolls. After spamming a ridiculous amount of them, his lungs finally remembered how to breathe. That absolute disaster had milked our main character completely dry of his healing stash. Seo-woon then popped open the kill log. Thanks to the final suicidal attack from that crazy archmage, absorbing his life energy was now totally off the table. But wait, to his absolute shock, the raid boss himself, Namsagwang, had somehow survived the nuke. His name was completely missing from the death feed. Suddenly, pathetic whimpering reached Seo-woon's ears. Moving like a ninja, he tracked down the sound of the crying baby. And oh boy, what a hilarious sight awaited our supposedly weak hero. He had to blink twice to believe it. The almighty martial arts god was lying there, practically kissing death's door, completely unable to pop a simple healing scroll. Turns out even the great Nam Sa Guang couldn't outrun a literal meteor strike. The guy had completely lost both of his arms. Good luck opening a potion now, buddy. Spotting a shadow nearby, the desperate amputee shamelessly begged the stranger for a heal. But the moment Siyun recognized the famous Nam Sa Guang, the mood completely shifted. Realizing his secret identity as the server's top player was busted, the martial artist looked absolutely terrified. Siyun just smirked, casually mentioning how curious he was about the overpowered loot carrying the #1 player. Seeing the server terror looking like a chewed-up dog toy was just the cherry on top. The panicking martial artist desperately tried to strike a deal, promising to hand-deliver the game's victory if Siyun saved his life. He really tried to sell himself as a crucial VIP ally. Too bad our hero was already drooling over the shiny loot and massive life force right in front of him. Why share the crown when he could take it all? Meanwhile, the desperate Nam Sa Guang frantically lied, claiming his gear wasn't even that good. Siyun just chuckled and politely introduced himself to the poor soul he was about to ruthlessly finish off. Accepting his utterly humiliating defeat, Nam Sa Guang used his dramatic last breath to swear he would forever haunt the one who betrayed him. Blah blah blah. And squelch. The strongest player on the server got casually stabbed straight in the dome. Siyun felt a tiny bit awkward, brutally finishing off someone with such a baby face. But then the real magic happened. His body acted like a vacuum, sucking up a ridiculous tsunami of life energy. The marksman's jaw literally dropped at the sheer volume. This guy was a walking battery. Siyun instantly felt like he had chugged 10 energy drinks as incredible chi exploded inside him. Right on cue, the system dinged with a server-wide announcement. Only 8 players left alive and the grand reveal. The almighty Nam Sa Guang had just been swatted like a bug by Jin Sun. Our archer instantly grinned, knowing the big bad cat was permanently offline, meaning all the cowardly mice would start crawling out of the woodwork, drunk on an absurd amount of new chi. Siyun couldn't help but feel like an absolute god among men. Then his eyes locked onto the jackpot, the glowing drop chest of his victim. Considering the monstrous internal energy he just slurped up, our hero knew this box was packed with the good stuff. He popped the lid, and oh boy, it was Christmas morning. A greedy grin spread across his face as he scooped up a massive handful of shiny rings. These bad boys massively buffed his agility, strength, stamina, and totally jacked up his magic resistance. Looking at the shiny loot, Siyun couldn't help but laugh at the dead martial artist's bold-faced lie. The guy literally cried about not relying on gear, yet his pockets were stuffed with these legendary accessories. Suddenly, a weird tingling sensation washed over him. He immediately snapped his fingers, pulling up his shiny new status window. Siyun almost choked on his spit. His stats had skyrocketed straight to the moon, with magic resistance hitting an absurd 90 points. Armed with these beautifully broken numbers, our hero mentally prepared his victory speech. The chest was also stuffed with dusty old martial arts manuals, but thanks to some annoying locked requirements, he couldn't instantly learn them. What a total ripoff. But right at that exact moment, the overpowered marksman felt a nasty tingle on his neck. His newly buffed senses screamed that some random mob was creeping up behind him. Before he could even turn around, boom, a massive fireball slammed straight into his face. The cocky enemy mage stepped out, laughing hysterically and lecturing him about looting while distracted. The arrogant fool even bragged that Siyun's victory over the top player was pure dumb luck, because obviously any idiot who falls for a basic sneak attack could never defeat Nam Sa Guang legitimately. But the mage's smug smile violently shattered. As the smoke cleared, his target was just casually standing there, completely unfazed by the inferno. Thanks to that ridiculous 90-point magic resistance stat, the so-called deadly fire magic felt like a gentle, warm summer breeze. It couldn't even singe his eyebrows. With a terrifying deadpan stare, Siyun slowly began to walk forward. Seeing this absolute monster casually strolling out of the flames, the squishy mage instantly lost his mind. Sweating buckets, he started screaming threats about summoning an even bigger batter explosion. Frantically, the panic-stricken wizard pumped all his mana into one final desperate nuke. But to our beautifully overpowered protagonist, this was just totally adorable. Siyun didn't even flinch, eating a second massive explosion straight to the chest without breaking his stride. It was officially payback time. Deciding to test drive his brand new toys, Siyun wound up for his very first martial arts technique. Wanting to teach this clown a brutal lesson, he unleashed the straight suffering fist. Bam! The impact was so hilariously overpowered that the mage practically exploded into a fountain of blood before flying backward and wrapping around a tree trunk like a wet noodle. Staring at his own fist, even our hero was completely dumbfounded by his ridiculous new damage output. Siwon finally got the memo. True martial arts damage. It is all about that sweet internal energy. Boom. One strike, one kill. Another poor soul bites the dust. As he greedily slurped up his latest victim's aura, Seo-woon smirked. With his magic resistance sitting pretty at 9T, those mid-tier spells tickled like a gentle breeze. But with the local martial arts genius out of the picture, the real monsters were bound to crawl out. Our hero sighed. Yep, this was going to be one painfully long night. Wasting zero time. He immediately resumed his sprint. Thanks to his shiny new upgrades, Seo-woon was zooming as fast as that old master he owed big time. After playing Sonic for 60 solid minutes, our hero hit the brakes to safely scan the danger zone. But then, some absolute madman started screaming for a fight. Seo-woon blinked in disbelief. Who actually yells in a death match? Talk about a death wish. This loudmouth holding an oversized buster sword dared everyone to come out and play. The beefed-up muscle monster roared, fully convinced that the entire server was just terrified of his massive gains. Right on cue, Karma came flying straight at his face. The giant swordsman panicked, desperately swinging his massive blade just in time to block a lethal arrow. While the meathead raged over what he called a cheap coward's trick, Seo-woon grabbed his popcorn. Who in their right mind was sniping with such terrifying precision? According to the angry meathead, only one marksman was crazy enough to pack that much raw aura into a single shot. The legendary elf archer Juro Kuwana, the pointy-eared sniper, was actually amused that this brute knew his glorious name. Seizing the moment, the muscle monster hyped him up, calling him the legendary divine archer of the mercenary world. The brain-dead bodybuilder then proposed an alliance. Let us team up, win this whole thing, and hunt down Jin Seo-woon. Hook, line, and sinker. The arrogant elf confidently hopped down from his tree and gracefully landed on the dirt. The mercenary smirked, introducing himself as the mighty Stano. He arrogantly promised the elf an easy carry to victory. The elf just gave him a deadpan one-word reply. Stano immediately realized this so-called divine archer was completely clueless. Juro Kuwana tilted his head, suddenly realizing his dramatic entrance might have been a hilariously bad miscalculation. Stano gave a villainous grin. Everyone knows a sniper coming into melee range is basically asking for a respawn. In record time, Stano threw their alliance right out the window. Time for some good old-fashioned backstabbing. He swung his giant sword to execute the archer. But oops, he missed the tiny detail flying straight at his head. Bam. An arrow pierced the giant's skull from behind. Juro Kuwana laughed out loud. Did this meathead seriously think he would actually party up with a brainless tank? Having wasted enough time on this clown, the elf refocused on hunting his real prey, which unfortunately was our hero. The same hero who was currently acting like a sneaky loot goblin, desperately sucking up the dropped chest's vitality. With only 6 players left, our guy was stressing over how slow the loot was absorbing. Come on faster! But then, the legendary marksman snapped his head right toward him. Seo-woon instantly turned into a living statue. As the elf stared directly at his spot, our hero started sweating bullets. Did this pointy-eared freak see through his invisibility cloak? He aggressively cursed his own greedy loot goblin instincts, dreading that the elf had some broken detection skill. Why did he have to blindly rush for the shiny loot? Fortunately, Juro Kuwana sighed and ignored Stano's drops. Why bother looting a guy who died that pathetically easily? Convinced the chest was full of trash-tier gear, the legendary archer finally walked away. Oh, thank the heavens. Seo-woon collapsed into a puddle of relief. That was way too close. The elf's killer instincts were absolutely terrifying. That horrifying name was now permanently tattooed on his brain. Yep, our hero just found the final boss of this server, but there was no time to rest. The system map suddenly started shrinking at hyperspeed. Seo-woon gulped hard. 87 days left. Yeah, right. The system was definitely rushing the endgame since nearly everyone was already dead. And then his luck went from bad to worse. He accidentally wandered straight into the absolute ultimate death trap, a massive open grass field. If he sneezed in this tall grass, every remaining monster would instantly pinpoint his exact location. Whoosh. A sudden ambush from nowhere. Seo-woon desperately backpedaled, completely horrified as glowing green blades rained down. Wait, he was invisible. How did they see him? Dancing through the deadly storm, he miraculously dodged the bombardment. It was utterly terrifying. The enemy was locking onto him perfectly, despite the overpowered stealth cloak. No way. Swish. Swish. Another massive wave of attacks rained down. This time, the sheer number of blades blocked out the sun. Running was officially off the table. With 0 options left, the invisible hero drew his weapon for a brutal head-on clash. He dropped into a battle stance. Seo-woon bet everything on his inner key. It was do or die. Boom. He unleashed his supreme trade strike. The sheer force of his fist birthed a monstrous shockwave that obliterated incoming spells instantly. Whoops. Our guy realized he severely underestimated his own ridiculous muscle power. Without hesitation, he launched himself skyward. Priority 1, find the cowardly sniper. Suddenly, our invisible dude spotted his prey. The target was locked. It was the very same guy who looked utterly flabbergasted. His ultimate full power attack just got swatted away by a basic punch. But then plot twist. A blade pierced flesh, painting the area red. The squishy mage gasped, realizing he just got backstabbed. The attacker mocked the wizard for completely draining his mana without saving any for a simple shield. The shadowy figure smirked. Stealth was his bread and butter, being an elite assassin obviously. Boom, another scrub bites the dust. Only 5 players remained standing. Meanwhile, our hero touched down. The rogue's eyes widened. Jin Se-woon was officially server famous, since he utterly bodied Nam Saigang. The assassin cheerfully explained that because of that epic kill, everyone wanted his head. The edgy rogue boasted about his flawless 100% win rate. Naturally, it was time to brawl. The fighters instantly charged at each other at breakneck speeds. The dagger-wielding edgelord sneered, calling our hero way too slow. In a flash, the rogue scored first blood. Our main character's arm was suddenly painted with fresh, nasty cuts. But Se-woon, knowing this rogue wasn't a joke, survived the barrage by wrapping his skin in thick inner ki. The Shadow Dweller bragged again. He claimed absolute victory, swearing he never lost a fight in the pitch black. Our guy sighed, super annoyed by this sweaty tryhard assassin. However, noticing the enemy relied on shadows, a genius idea struck him. Meanwhile, the rogue decided to finish the job. Activating his ultimate skill, the sneaky bastard completely vanished into thin air. He closed in instantly, unleashing a deadly cross-slash meant to slice our hero perfectly in half. Plot twist. Jin Se-woon bamboozled him with a clone, popping his own stealth skill. Turns out the rogue's cheap trick was garbage compared to our guy's legendary invisibility. Gripping the enemy's arms from behind, Se-woon smirked. He easily tracked the assassin by reading his weak aura. He told the trash talker to keep yapping right before viciously snapping both his arms. The rogue instantly sobbed, begging for mercy and offering to team up against the remaining players. Too bad, before he could finish whining, Se-woon shattered his spine for the instant kill. With that, only 4 players remained. The annoying rogue Tamarind was permanently logged out by our ruthless main character. He greedily sucked up both the rogue's and the mage's aura, then sprinted to loot their glorious treasure drops. Inside Tamarind's stash, Se-woon discovered a completely broken skill manual. This bad boy let him spawn shadow clones scaling with his massive inner Kai pool. If that dead assassin actually had any ki, he might have posed a real threat with this. The mage's loot held Carmen's Eye, an ultimate anti-stealth radar. Sadly, our hero's magic circle was way too low to equip it. Realizing his invisibility cheat code wasn't totally foolproof anymore. A sudden threat rained from the sky. Se-woon casually tilted his head perfectly, dodging the lethal strike aimed right at his brain. An arrow embedded itself into the dirt. Our guy instantly recognized the cowardly sniper's signature move. But wait, a massive flying boulder suddenly hurtled toward him. Se-woon blinked. He had never seen this earth magic before, and no archer shoots boulders. With zero room to dodge the massive rock, our absolute unit decided to just punch it. Wham! He met the falling meteor with a straight jab. Flooding his fist with pure mana, the mad lad literally exploded the boulder into dust. It suddenly clicked in his brain. He was getting hardcore ganked by a duo. A mysterious voice clapped for his brute strength. Se-woon instantly backflipped, dodging a literal flash freeze attack by mere millimeters. He rapidly created space. Surprise, surprise. It was actually a 3 versus 1 boss raid. 3 desperate players teamed up just to kill him. Now facing 3 absolute raid bosses, just dropped Senturk, the Royal Pain Carrion, the Demon's Lackey, and Yuro Kuwana, the Divine Sniper. Meanwhile, our poor titleless protagonist was caught in a massive pickle. This incredibly unbalanced matchmaking lobby immediately promised the young martial artist an instant game over. Facing a sudden villain alliance, the smartest tactical move would naturally be to trigger some friendly fire. Sadly, he literally just met these guys. Right on cue, the edgy dark mage fanboyed over the arrogant King Senturk. The royal snob was absolutely repulsed by the dark magic cooties. But the mage smoothly apologized, noting that royal privilege meant squat in this dungeon. Realizing this goth weirdo was pitching a temporary villain team-up our hero side, fate itself really spawned 3 bosses at once. Without hesitation, the bad guys targeted his stealth build. The demon's lapdog started chanting, and boom, a blindingly obnoxious holy light completely flooded the zone. It was literally a flashbang straight to the face. The dark mage completely nuked every single shadow, leaving our stealthy boy painfully exposed in broad daylight. This was a massive problem since his legendary stealth cloak strictly required shadows to function. Taking advantage of the flashbang, the overly dramatic mage started yapping about some ancient grudge, thanking the boy for killing his rival. But instead of sending a gift basket, this toxic magic caster decided the best reward was absolute annihilation. Screaming about his Dark Lord, he unleashed his ultimate skill, the Dark Blade Storm. Normally, these squishy spellcasters are absolute garbage in a fistfight, but charging this guy meant dodging a literal hurricane of spinning edge. Despite the massive meat grinder in his way, our unhinged hero hit the gas anyway. Carrion laughed at the sheer stupidity of a fistfighter rushing a spell and cranked his magic up to maximum overkill. Siwoo desperately pumped every drop of his inner ki into a fragile energy shield prepared to face-tank the blender. Slicing winds shredded his defenses like cheap paper. His priceless stealth cloak was officially reduced to worthless rags. This chaotic blender had backed him into a terrible corner, chewing through his mana barrier like a starving dog. The smug, dark wizard practically dropped his jaw, flabbergasted that the crazy kid wasn't reduced to bloody ground beef yet. Emerging from the storm of 1,000 magical paper cuts, our boy ignited his ultimate martial art, the Severing Fist. Taking a massive step forward, a completely blood-drenched Jin Sowon threw a heavy haymaker straight at the nerd's face. But the mage just smirked, declaring this anime-style comeback totally useless before casting his creepiest spell yet. Touch of the Dead instantly. A disgusting army of zombie hands erupted from the floorboards. The creepy grasping fingers were literally everywhere. For the first time, our overconfident protagonist realized he was fighting a genuine top-tier sweat. Without panicking, he triggered his spirit illusion steps. In a single, flawless motion, the martial artist vanished like a ghost. The demon's favorite lackey lost his absolute mind, completely baffled that a meathead brawler could pull off high-level magic tricks. Closing the gap instantly, Siwoo wound up his fist for a beautifully cinematic knockout punch. But, plot twist. The royal snob finally joined the chat. A pristine rapier suddenly skewered the dark mage right through the spine, stabbing our hero in the process. Coughing up blood, the betrayed wizard cursed the royal for his incredibly toxic team-killing tactics. Senturk just coldly shrugged. Friendly fire was always turned on, and he never actually added the goth kid to his party list anyway. He mockingly thanked the dying mage for being a convenient meat shield to snipe the annoying main character. Dusting off his hands, the king locked eyes with the divine archer. Senturk bragged about how incredibly strange it felt to finally face the army-destroying sniper in a standard 1-versus-1 duel. But the archer just chuckled, casually dropping the massive spoiler that this wasn't a solo raid yet. Before the mustache-twirling monarch could even process the warning, our protagonist materialized out of thin air and completely rattled his royal skull. The superhuman right hook was so disrespectfully hard, it literally shattered the king's premium armor and folded him like a lawn chair. The majestic swordsman was instantly blasted into a mountain. Panting heavily, Siwoo finally took a breather. The divine archer just smiled, giving the kid a 5-star review for baiting the backstab with a phantom clone. Sick of the endless villain monologues, our boy cracked his knuckles and told the archer to just throw hands already. The archer laughed at the youthful impatience, pointing out that the boss fight was currently experiencing a second phase. Miraculously surviving the skull crusher, the battered king crawled out of the rubble, completely furious about the unsportsmanlike jump scare. Spitting dirt, the royal actually commended the kid for having enough ridiculous raw stats to break his pay-to-win gear. In classic martial arts fashion, our unhinged hero randomly ripped his shirt off, asking if they wanted a 1-versus-1 or a team-up beatdown. Tired of the disrespect, Senturk dropped his heavy weights. The colossal monarch fired up his massive engines and blitzed forward. Our earthling's eyes practically bugged out at the sheer teleportation-level speed as a shiny rapier instantly pierced the arm of our main character. Senturk practically flexed his ego, boasting he was the fastest player alive. He bragged about turning our hero's left arm into dead weight. No arm meant no ultimate moves. Sewon started sweating bullets, realizing this guy who looked like a pure meathead was actually a cardio freak. Even his inner chi couldn't track this gym bro's speed. Still, our boy wasn't about to rage quit right at the finish line. Channeling his spicy inner energy, he simply snapped the boss's fancy toothpick. His accumulated aura completely shattered the blade. The royal meathead dropped his jaw. His precious weapon, reduced to absolute trash. Our main character didn't miss a beat. He yanked the metal splinter right out of his own flesh. Activating his throwing mastery, he yeeted it back like a lethal dart. The king barely dodged a one-way ticket to the lobby. However, this pompous ruler with the glorious mustache was absolutely furious. His beautiful face had been scratched. Meanwhile, Sewon just casually popped a healing scroll. The royal boss had to admit, this kid was a stubborn roach. Deciding to stop playing around, he ignited his blinding aura blade, forging a literal lightsaber from the hilt. Senturk finally gave some respect to this absolute menace of a rookie. Making a king draw his aura was no small feat. Ding, Jin Sewon's arm was back to 100%. And with that, our mad lad activated his spirit illusion steps. Dumping his entire mana bar, he went full ninja and spawned a whole squad of shadow clones. The royal swordsman twitched in sheer annoyance at this massive spam of clones. Both Jin Se-woon and the mustache monarch of Kersonen were locked in a sweaty, desperate battle for the crown. Meanwhile, the third player, just chilling in the VIP seats, was screaming for them to wrap it up. The divine archer was literally falling asleep. He was tired of waiting for the winner to step up to his level. Back on the ground, our main character smashed the limit switch. This was the exact king who told him to shut his trap and throw hands instead. Now, Senturk was racing against the clock to squash the bug in exactly 2 minutes. That was his glowing sword's absolute limit. Se-woon knew his health bar was flashing red. Noticing his energy reserves hitting absolute zero, it was a literal do-or-die moment. The massive Trackstar King and the army of fake martial artists violently collided. The royal mustache furiously stabbed at a clone, completely ignoring the huge blind spot behind him. Bam! A sneaky back attack landed perfectly. The blonde ruler spun around and viciously slashed at the coward, only to stare in absolute disbelief. He had just sliced right through thin air. Realizing he had been bamboozled by another fake, Senturk swore to wipe out every single hologram, and the troll who made them. But out of nowhere, smack! A fist planted right into his royal jaw. A sneaky martial artist clone had completely caught him off guard. Since that right hook actually hurt, the king locked onto him, convinced this was the true Se-woon. Our cheeky hero grinned, asking the king to rate his fist sandwich. He casually mocked the boss, telling him to quit playing guessing games. Plot twist. Every shadow buddy possessed the exact same attack stats as the main body. They were practically walking cheat codes. Suddenly, a dynamic duo rained down from the sky, launching a synchronized dropkick that the king sidestepped by a mere millimeter. The enraged mustache man unleashed his piercing sword energy. In one smooth, devastating horizontal sweep, he carved through the twin fakes like butter. Poof. The pesky illusions popped into pixels. The smug king scoffed. These budget copies were literally one-hit trash mobs. Now, only 5 targets stood on the battlefield. But the clock was ticking, and the king's magical glowing stick would vanish in exactly 60 seconds. Up in the nosebleeds, the elf archer was actually eating popcorn. He was completely baffled that the mighty ruler was getting bullied by clones. Swallowing his pride, the desperate king screamed for an assist. He promised the camper endless loot once they survived this raid. But before the archer could even type a warning in chat, bam! Our roguelike hero teleported squarely into the boss's personal space. The king panicked and stabbed blindly, only for his target to beautifully duck. Se-woon immediately fired his ultimate severing strike. The shockwave was insanely heavy, but the slippery royal somehow blocked it, with his fancy handguard in the absolute nick of time. Our boy clicked his tongue in pure frustration. Capitalizing on the bounce back, Senturk wildly lunged at the guy right in front of him. He thought he finally nailed the real player. Splash! Crimson pixels exploded everywhere as the blade sank deep. The decoy vanished with a massive hole in its chest. Clone 3 was down. The king's eyes widened in horror. He got juked by another fake. He could practically hear the invisible audience laughing at his noob gameplay. The royal ego simply couldn't handle this toxic trolling. Tipping over the edge, the furious boss roared. He yelled that the tournament was pure trash, and his only mission now was to turn Jin Se-woon into mincemeat. Witnessing this epic rage quit, the sniper elf muttered that he looked like a crazy demon lord. The deranged swordsman taunted our hero to dodge this one. Whoosh. He unleashed a blinding torpedo thrust, completely erasing 2 more shadow boys in a single blink. Just like that, the mob count dropped drastically. Now, there were only 2 identical martial artists standing in the arena. It was literally a 50% gotcha pull for the real boss. Without hesitating, both surviving players sprinted full speed right at the unhinged monarch. The speedy rapier user beautifully ducked the first incoming haymaker. But spoiler alert, he completely ate the second fist with his face, right through the gut. Senturk finally realized the hit actually landed immediately, stabbing the punk who just punched him in the face. But wait. The blade sliced through the kid like warm butter, making it glaringly obvious this was just another annoying clone. With only 1 martial artist left standing, the furious king pointed his weapon, declaring this had to be the real deal. Finally, a true one-on-one showdown, Senturk boasted that his very next strike would end this whole circus. But our main character did not even spare him a witty comeback. Boom. Both fighters dashed forward, crossing the battlefield in a flash. Jin Se-woon casually parried the enemy's massive arm with a swift kick. The king actually praised the kid, admitting his close combat skills were definitely not trash. Deciding to stop playing around, Centric unleashed his ultimate move, the Aura Blade Lightning Storm. An absolutely blinding flash of pure energy erupted from his shattered rapier. The shockwave was so absurdly overpowered that it completely blasted our hero's leg into oblivion. Sowoon shrieked like a dying banshee while the king flashed a villainous grin. Just like that, our invincible protagonist kissed the dirt, howling in pure agony. Desperate Sayowoon shamelessly begged for his life, swearing to help the king take down that pesky archer. Instead, he got a blade straight through the stomach. Game over, man. Finally, the blinding light of the aura blade fizzled out. The king had successfully ended the brawl just under the 2-minute limit of his ultimate skill. Centric wiped his sweat fully, admitting he would have been absolute toast if this dragged on a second longer. But wait. Something felt horribly off. The king froze in absolute horror. His eyes bugged out as he realized his epic stabbing motion hit absolutely nothing but thin air. Out of nowhere, a hand clamped down hard on the royal mustache wearer's head. In less than a heartbeat, the real Sayowoon crushed the king's skull like a cheap watermelon. Oops. He casually admitted he totally would have been wrecked if his clones had not tired the big guy out. Off to the side, the divine archer slow clapped, genuinely shocked by the cheeky earthling's upset victory. Jurikana smirked, thanking our sneaky protagonist for taking out the trash and squashing that loudmouth king. The elf found it hilarious how the mighty Centric, who burned his very soul just to secure a shiny win, was completely clowned by a kid playing hide-and-seek with clones. However, that very same clever young martial artist was now standing directly in the crosshairs. No rest for the wicked, the divine archer instantly launched a lethal strike to claim the grand prize. Our boy was absolutely terrified. Sure, Sawoon had sucked up a massive amount of sweet internal energy right after scoring that last kill. Even if it was not as juicy as his previous loot, the main character's mana tank was finally full again. He had enough gas in the tank to brawl with the elf. But panic quickly set in. Sawoon barely dodged a razor-sharp arrow aimed at his face. Screw this. He instantly spammed his clone skill, summoning an entire army of martial artists to rush the pointy-eared sniper. The elf sighed at the ridiculous human wave tactic, finding it super annoying, yet a cocky smirk still crept onto his face. Without sweating, the archer fired a single, perfectly aimed arrow straight into one specific copy's leg. Bullseye. What a totally unbelievable shot. Instantly, the real body face planted into the dirt while the massive clone army vanished into thin air. The archer casually strolled over to the fallen player. Jurikana happily explained, he had to pin our slippery hero down. Bam. He shot an arrow right through his right hand, then another through the left. Nailed it. Annoyed and bleeding, our hero screamed at the pointy-eared cheat, demanding to know how he spotted the real deal. The divine archer just flashed a pretty boy smile and claimed he solely trusted his gamer instincts. While our human was busy raging at this plot, Armor excused the elf actually acknowledged just how hard he must have grinded to survive this long. Jurikana paid his respects to the underdog, but our protagonist was absolutely over this cheesy dialogue and just told him to pull the trigger already. Zap. The battle was officially over. Jin So-woon got absolutely wrecked, eating an arrow right to the dome. As the victorious elf wondered if he finally won, the glorious final treasure chest materialized out of nowhere. This chaotic deathmatch was finally wrapped up. Meanwhile, in the afterlife lobby, our dead hero angrily blamed his own sloppy plays. Even after burning through all that mana and sweating bullets, the guy who snagged second place was incredibly salty. But then, ding, the system interface popped up, congratulating him for unlocking the right to enter the second stage. As all the shiny loot he hoarded during the match appeared on screen, the system handed him 140 shiny reward coins. It turns out every single piece of junk he looted had a price tag. The system politely informed him he was now free to go on a wild shopping spree with his hard-earned cash. But cue the spit take. Our hero checked the store and realized his favorite cloning skill cost a mind-blowing 130 coins. Absolute daylight robbery. Luckily, the system dropped another message stating that as one of the top 5 survivors, he got to play a gacha roulette for free loot. Since he gloriously secured second place in the bloodbath, Jin So-woon scored 2 free spins. He immediately clasped his hands, praying to the random number gods for that ultra-expensive invisibility cloak or a free cloning manual. Realizing his luck might actually turn around, the martial artist broke into a massive, greedy grin, ready to milk this system dry. Time for the gacha. Pulls. He spun the wheel, his eyes glued to the blur of prizes. And then, smash that stop button. Se-woon held his breath, sweating bullets. And the grand prize for our hero was a basic escrow's necklace. Seriously, the universe really hit him with the absolute cheapest trash teardrop. Total garbage. But wait, he still had 1 free spin left. Time to unleash his inner gambling addict. He begged Buddha Jesus and every system admin out there, please do not scam me. He slammed the button. The wheel slowed down. his heart beating like a hyperactive drum. Would it be trash again? Nope. Jackpot. The spirit illusion steps, he practically did a happy dance, the absolute most expensive skill book, and he snagged it totally free. Take that capitalist system. The glorious loot flashed into his inventory. Time for a little shopping spree. Since the gods of luck blessed him with the priciest item, his wallet was fat. He bought out the essentials like a boss on Black Friday. Bag packed. Wallet happy. Shopping complete. The system chimed in, wishing him luck for round 2. And just like that, the warp sequence initiated. Whoosh. So-Won blinked. He was back on Earth, standing literally in the exact same spot he vanished from. Was it all a wild fever dream? Nope. He felt a cold metal band wrapped around his finger. The subspace ring was right there. Holy crap. The death game, the magic, the system. It was all real. Grabbing his backpack, he strutted down the street. The tutorial was over. But his insane double life, that was just getting started. A brand new, utterly chaotic chapter. Forget the loan sharks or normal life. Se-Won was officially out of their league now. And he knew for a fact, round 2 was coming fast. Time to grind. He hurried to his tiny apartment. Getting second place was cool and all, but second place is just the first loser. Our boy was aiming for the absolute top. Number 1 or bust. He dropped his bags in the cheap college dorm his parents rented for him. University. Midterms. College prep was officially canceled. Who needs a degree when you have system powers? Time to train. He refused to play the victim again. Next time, he would be the apex predator, the ultimate hunter. But first, he groaned. His mana pool was literally running on fumes after that crazy deathmatch. Since casually murdering people for experience points is highly illegal in modern Korea, he had to meditate. Boring. His master's voice echoed in his head. Cultivate your spiritual energy. Sure, absorbing enemies is way faster, but practice makes perfect. Se-Won remembered asking his crazy master if basic training could actually make him overpowered. The old geezer had just laughed in his face, claiming his brutal training methods usually ended in sudden death. Typical martial arts master nonsense. Only time would tell if Se-Won was a secret genius or just a dead newbie. 4 grueling hours of cross-legged meditation later. His legs were entirely numb, and his inner energy, pathetic. He barely gathered a single drop of power. He collapsed onto his back, groaning in total defeat. Earth's energy levels were absolute trash. Meditating here was a total waste of time. Time for plan B. He started dumping out his shiny new loot, glaring at a cheap 30-coin skill book, the Iron Fist. He should have bought a better move. He broke into a cold sweat. Wait, do I actually have to read this? Studying martial arts manually would take literal years. But suddenly, ding. A glorious blue panel appeared. The system was online on Earth. Thank you, lazy game mechanics. He instantly consumed the skill book. Whoosh. Knowledge directly injected into his brain. He threw a quick jab cross-kick combo at the air. Weak. Without his energy reserves, it felt like a wet noodle punch. Oh well, time to appraise the bling. He grabbed the trash tier necklace from the gacha roulette. He bit into the metal. Wait a minute. This thing is 24-karat solid gold. Se-Won's jaw literally hit the floor. His eyes turned into dollar signs. 10 million won. For a 1-coin trash drop. If he farmed 10 of these, he could literally retire. He was sitting on a gold mine. Everything from the system could be pawned off for filthy real-world cash. Like the panacea elixir, 1 year of perfect health and 0 diseases. It was the ultimate miracle cure. Desperate billionaires would throw literal dump trucks of cash at him for this. He was going to be filthy rich. The death game was officially his golden ticket to high society. Just as he started planning his billionaire lifestyle. Grumble. His stomach roared like an angry dragon. Right. He had only been eating dry jerky this whole time. Internal energy. But first, priority number 1, food. Our starving hero dragged himself to Grandma's diner, ordering the cheapest combo meal. This 5,001 feast was the ultimate luxury he craved in that hellish game. Actual tears streamed down Se-Won's face as the glorious taste of white rice hit his soul. The grumpy owner immediately started roasting him, telling the grown man to stop bawling over a bowl of rice. Se-Won defended himself, claiming he was just moved by the immaculate flavor. The granny just sighed, telling him to eat up and get seconds. Just as he suspected, time flowed way differently in the real world compared to the game. Wiping his plate clean, the granny happily took his money and shooed him out. Se-Won needed to stockpile his stamina before the next round, even though the schedule was a total mystery. Then it hit him. He brought back some sweet loot. Slipping on the 2-coin ring of strength, our guy wondered if the real-world physics would match the game's mechanics. Boom. The power surge was instant. He bent his knees and launched himself into the stratosphere. His entire body felt like an explosive rocket. Despite practically touching the clouds, Seo-woon stuck a flawless superhero landing. Sweating bullets, he prayed no random streamer caught that gravity-defying stunt. Seeing how the ring's stats worked flawlessly in reality, gears started turning in his head. Back in his room, he stared at the ultimate item he meant to save for his energy awakening. Screw patience, he wanted the power-up right now. He pulled out his most expensive treasure, the 50-coin elixir of inner sight. Back in the game, this nightmare juice paralyzed him for 3 whole hours and boiled his cells alive. Naturally, he chugged it like a champion. The agonizing effects hit instantly. Overwhelming, monstrous energy rampaged through our hero's veins, dropping the empty bottle to the floor. Fast forward 3 hours, and his frantic neighbor was reporting a structurally melting wall. The dude complained that the doorknob was literally sizzling, prompting dispatch to send 911 over immediately. A local granny tried convincing the cops it didn't smell like smoke, so they assumed it was just a busted boiler. The paranoid neighbor wasn't having it, swearing some shady black magic was cooking inside. The cop confidently grabbed the handle to check, only to hilariously burn his hand on the searing metal. Fed up, the squad banged on the door, demanding the blazing suspect inside open up immediately. They yelled that they were just here to help out. Slowly, the scorching door creaked open. Staring at the chaotic mess, the confused officer told the sweaty kid they got a noise and fire complaint. Seo-woon straight up lied, claiming he just had a terrible fever. He swore he only cranked his heater to the max and boldly questioned why the cops showed up instead of medics. Since they suspected arson, the officers defended their protocol and awkwardly offered to call an ambulance for the supposedly sick guy. Waving them off, our hero promised he'd sleep it off. Annoyed by the fake alarm, the cops marched away loudly, scolding the nosy neighbor for wasting police time. Finally alone, Seo-woon slammed the door shut. The poor guy had suffered unimaginable agony from that potion, nearly seeing the Grim Reaper, if it wasn't for his legendary Supreme Blanket technique. This brutal reality check proved that bringing game items into the real world was a massive safety hazard. Still, his inner core hummed with terrifying power, begging for a quick test drive. Firing a casual palm strike from across the room, he instantly vaporized his own desk chair. Staring at the splintered mess, Seo-woon mentally cried, realizing his future loot money was now going straight to an IKEA replacement. The next morning at the local outdoor gym, our guy arrived to grind his martial arts stats, only to find the park swarming with early birds. Annoyed by the crowd, he debated if becoming a midnight workout ninja was a better strategy. That is until some spicy drama caught his eye. A pack of sketchy high school delinquents loitered at the mountain base, with a girl nervously asking if the big boss actually summoned her. Naturally, as they acted all tough, a brave grandpa interrupted loudly, reminding the brats that smoking was strictly banned here. As the elder nagged them, the edgiest thug snapped back, barking that not even his own parents cared about his misdeeds. At that snarky reply, the grandpa smoothly retorted that clearly raising him was the real mistake. The disrespect left the punk absolutely furious. Seo-woon's spider sense started tingling. The raging kid raised his fist, threatening to smash the old man's face when out of nowhere, bam! A foot slammed right into the thug's jaw. The punk was launched into orbit before crashing beautifully into a metal trash can. A mysterious adult stepped up, casually lecturing the flying punk that he had no right to act so tough in front of his elders. While the whole park stood frozen in shock, a shadowy figure silently approached our hero. "Look, buddy, we literally just met," Seo-woon protested. But this absolute unit of a high schooler towering well over 6 feet glared down and asked if our guy was rushing to meet the Grim Reaper. Right then, Seo-woon realized he had stepped into a massive, steaming pile of trouble. The teenage giant demanded answers, furious and wanting to confirm if our main character actually dared to smack his precious little brother. Seo-woon calmly explained that the brat started it by disrespecting his elders, dropping some classic uncle wisdom about how kids these days shouldn't be puffing on cigarettes in broad daylight. But right in the middle of his epic lecture on proper parenting, his newly awakened senses screamed danger. He instinctively leaned back, barely dodging a massive fist aimed right at his face. The giant kid was actually trying to deck him. Annoyed Seo-woon reflexively fired back with a devastating counterattack. Boom! The strike landed with terrifying force. Seo-woon immediately broke into a cold sweat, realizing he might have just punched the kid's soul out of his body. But before he could panic too much, the situation got surprisingly spicy. Out of nowhere, a shiny switchblade clicked open. The towering thug gripped his weapon, fully intending to slice our hero into sashimi. Clearly, terminal stupidity was a genetic trait in this family. Facing down a deadly C-2000 combat knife, Seo-woon casually dodged every swipe. The system had officially ruined normal life for him. He was so far beyond these regular non-playable characters now, it wasn't even fair. With a lazy yawn, he launched a sweeping kick to sweep the giant's legs. Trying to be a good citizen, Seo-woon held back using barely 50% of his terrifying power. Sadly, half power of the 10,000 palm technique was still absolute overkill. The colossal teenager flew backward like a human cannonball, violently crashing into a tree with a sickening crunch of shattered bones. Suddenly, a sea of smartphone cameras surrounded them. Seowon mentally face-palmed. He used way too much juice. Desperate, he pointed at the groaning giant and loudly announced, "Wow, what an amazing performance. Give it up for this incredible stuntman, folks." Keeping up the act, he scolded the bleeding thug about smoking and the dangers of playing with sharp toys, then leaving two totally wrecked teenagers groaning in the dirt. Our overpowered main character deployed his ultimate technique running for his life. He seriously regretted using cheat codes on basic street mobs. One wrong move, and he would trade his glorious martial arts journey for a cozy prison cell. Sure, the system spoon-fed him god-tier skills, but he definitely needed time to actually learn how to use the brakes. And with that terrifying thought, he sprinted into the sunset. Fast forward 30 peaceful days. Seowon was deep in an intense meditation session connecting with the universe when his glorious zen was completely shattered by a loud, obnoxious ringtone. It was the absolute highest authority, his mother. The sweet lady was worried sick, scolding her son for totally ghosting her for weeks. She naturally asked how his exciting new college life was going. Sweating bullets, Seowon cheerfully lied through his teeth. There was absolutely no way he could confess that he ditched his expensive textbooks to become a magical martial artist. Trying to change the subject, he asked about his dad, but the universe had a cruel punchline waiting. His mother sobbed, revealing his father had been in a horrific car crash. Seowon's blood ran cold. His hardworking dad was just out making a delivery when some absolute scumbag ran a red light and smashed into him. His mother broke down crying. The medical bills were astronomical, the insurance was useless, and the surgery cost a fortune. She was totally humiliated to be begging her college boy son to return the meager allowance she had barely scraped together for him. Without hesitating, Seowon demanded to know the exact hospital bill, silently reaching his hand straight into his magical subspace inventory. 2,000,000 won. That was the magic number. Gripping his loot, our hero confidently declared he had a foolproof plan to fix everything. As his mom tearfully apologized for ruining his day, Seowon snapped the phone shut and bolted out the door. His parents were saints, who had spent their entire lives bouncing between crappy rental apartments. His dad had broken his back for pennies, grinding through endless soul-crushing part-time jobs just to keep them fed. Seowon wiped away a frustrated tear. He had spent his whole life being a useless, expensive potato while his parents suffered. But not anymore. It was finally time for the ultimate payback arc. Our hero marched straight into a pawn shop, slamming an ancient glowing necklace on the counter. The greedy shopkeeper's eyes instantly sparkled at the bizarre artifact. Seowon whipped up a tragic lie, claiming it was a dusty old family heirloom. The lady analyzed it, drooling over its obvious historical value, while Seowon nervously asked how much cash it could fetch. As she started rambling about how this was not just some standard chunk of gold, Seowon cut her off. He did not care about the lore, he just needed cold hard cash for his dad's medical bills immediately. The legendary martial artist was basically begging for a quick loan. A few tense minutes later, our guy walked out the front door, pockets heavy with freshly printed bills. Thanks to the recent gold rush, he finally secured enough money to fix up his dad and maybe even buy a decent meal. But remembering the shady shopkeeper's massive evil grin, Seowon totally realized he just got scammed out of a fortune. Lesson learned. If he wanted to avoid getting ripped off while fencing magical system loot, he seriously needed a better business strategy. But first, hospital. Money to his mom. Seeing the ridiculous amount of cash in her account, she immediately panicked, convinced her son had just signed his life away to some shady loan sharks. Our guy smoothly lied, claiming he was just a ridiculously hardcore part-timer. Not wanting to answer any more terrifying mom questions, he hung up, making a quick excuse about skipping the hospital visit. Later that night, Seowon was chilling in his room when a juicy piece of street gossip caught his attention. Two teenagers outside were loudly roasting a viral clip. They called it cheap CGI garbage, but the shaky camera angles screamed hidden footage. A guy on screen was literally chanting incantations Seowon nearly choked. To a normal viewer, it was just some massive nerd role-playing, but our protagonist knew those exact system spells. Plot twist: he wasn't the only Korean player grinding in reality. The plot thickened when the kids mentioned the video kept getting aggressively scrubbed from the internet. Seowon rubbed his chin, finally realizing that other awakened players might actually ruin his peaceful vibe. Meanwhile, in some villainous lair, a sketchy suited boss was sweating bullets on the phone, begging for forgiveness from higher-ups and swearing to scrub the internet clean. He slammed the phone down, barking at his poor minion for an update on the viral Korean wizard. But the moment the lackey stammered that they couldn't track all these random awakened players, the boss absolutely lost it. He yeeted a solid gold paperweight straight at the minion's skull. How dare these random nobodies get superpowers instead of his elite guild? He screamed at them to hunt down every single clout-chasing player on the web. Then, like a true psychopath, he yelled at the bleeding minion to stop dripping on his ridiculously expensive Persian carpet. While a healer desperately patched up his coworker, the boss just kept whining about their incompetence. With a final roar, he kicked them out to do their jobs. Fast forward through the sweaty summer straight into the crisp autumn breeze. 2 whole months of grinding had passed in the real world, and our boy hadn't skipped a single night of secret training. His mana core was getting juicy, and his control was finally leveling up. Suddenly, feeling spicy, Sewon launched himself into the air, ready to flex his totally legally distinct brand-free shadow clone technique. He unleashed a brutal spatial strike, but thanks to his painfully low mana pool, only one pathetic, sad-looking clone popped out. And worse. The battery life on this thing was terrible. Still, the main character and his dollar store double dashed through the woods. They struck a dramatic pose, their fists colliding. Poof. The clone instantly vaporized. Sewon sighed. Talk about a downgrade. Back when he was fighting that massive sword boss, he casually spammed 8 of these bad boys. Did he short-circuit his internal energy back then? Brain power depleted, his stomach rumbled. He reached into his magical subspace for a midnight snack when bam! A blinding system light swallowed him whole. Welcome back to the tutorial dimension. Just like his first rodeo, the lobby was packed with terrified people screaming in 50 different languages. Seeing the absolute chaos, Sewon did the math. Death games drop exactly every 2 months. Right on cue, the robotic system voice echoed. But to our veteran gamer's absolute surprise, it announced a tutorial phase. That definitely wasn't on the menu during his first terrifying match. A devious smirk crept onto his face. This lobby was an absolute goldmine of clueless fresh meat. Then he spotted it. Some kid perching on a giant statue like he was Batman. Given the uniform, definitely a high schooler. Sewon blinked. His very first time spotting another Korean in the arena. The kid locked eyes with him. Sewon mentally groaned. These Gen Alpha kids and their desperate aura farming. He could tell the edgelord wasn't a complete noob, but there was no way he was as broken as Namgung. With all 200 sacrifices, players gathered, the real fun began. The rules dropped. Survive in the top 200, to pass hit the top 20 for the juicy loot. Wait a second. 200 players and the top 200 qualify. This was practically a free vacation. 0 elimination risk. He chuckled darkly, ready to unleash his inner apex predator. But just as the tutorial ended, his jaw dropped. Just as he settled in, the system dropped a troll update. Surprise duo mode was now unlocked for this bloodbath. The announcer casually stated players could buddy up. The catch. You snatch the crown as long as one teammate doesn't bite the dust. But for the socially awkward players who failed to find a partner, have fun playing solo, Sewon blinked. No wonder this lobby was stuffed with 200 meat shields instead of 100. Our guy was baffled. Weren't they all strangers? Yet these absolute randoms were pairing up like it was speed dating. Picking a scrub meant carrying dead weight. So our hero locked his radar onto that suspicious high schooler. Surely that edgy kid was an overpowered veteran worth recruiting, right? Well, plot twist. The kid pulled a Houdini. The teenager he thought was desperate for a carry had completely vanished into thin air. Sweating bullets, Sewon scrambled for a backup plan. He approached the first random guy only to get friend-zoned. Taken. The next one, taken. It felt like getting rejected at a middle school dance. Literally, everyone was cuffed. Sewon knew some lonely souls had to be lurking around, but finding them in this ocean of tryhards was hopeless. And just like that, the matchmaking timer hit 0. Solo versus squads it is. Guess he would just have to murder everybody. Welcome to day 1 of the nightmare. Sewon immediately pinged a cozy little death trap village. It screamed high-tier loot, so without skipping a beat, he swan-dived straight down. Dropping like a glorious, heavily armed meteor, his gamer brain activated. The strategy: touch grass first, then spawn camp the poor fools landing after him. Flawless logic. Boots hit the dirt. Sewon instantly activated speedrun mode and whipped around. Oh great. 6 sweaty players were falling right on his head. 3 duos at once. Sounds like a fair fight. He sprinted right at them. Our madman had shadow-boxed in his room for weeks, agonizing over his past mistakes. Now, it was time to unleash his beautifully toxic master plan. Meanwhile, in a totally different zip code, a squishy little mage was puking from the drop. But before the poor nerd could even ping his teammate Smash, his magic barrier shattered like cheap glass. The fragile caster shrieked, totally lost in the sauce. Sewon smirked. Magic users are just free experience points. Charging up his absolute unit of a fist, he delivered a gut punch straight from hell. The nerd coughed up half his internal organs. But wait, a troll notification popped up. Down state was active. If he didn't finish his plate, the enemy's partner would just revive him. Gross. But just as he raised his boot to squish the wizard's skull, boss music started playing. A literal tank in heavy armor came charging with a massive lance. Sawun barely danced around the pointy stick of death only to eat a shield bash to the ribs. Ugh, the annoying boyfriend had arrived. Talk about aggressive teamwork. Scraping his shoes against the dirt, Sawun chuckled at the knight's ridiculous horsepower. This tin can bruiser looked like a seasoned brawler. Too bad he didn't realize who he was messing with. Here is the funny thing about Sawun's martial arts. It was literally designed to bully people who use weapons. But since nobody walks around Earth with a halberd, he had only ever used it against his imaginary friends. Finally, a live test dummy. The sheer joy of legally beating up an armored knight was just too hilarious. He flashed a wicked grin. The angry tin can charged like a raging bull. But Sawun, he did not even flinch. Right as the deadly lance threatened to impale his handsome face, our absolute madman went fluid. He swiped the spear aside like it was a minor inconvenience. Slipping past the danger zone, he buried a fist right into the armor's sweet spot. The knight raged, totally humiliated by a guy fighting bare-handed. But the combo was not over. Sawun spotted an opening wider than a barn door. Focusing enough aura to level a building, he twisted his hips and unleashed a palm strike that practically folded the knight in half. The tank was wheezing, but the disrespect had just begun. Sawun yanked him down by the helmet and delivered a knee strike so brutal it shattered steel. Yep, that skull was officially scrambled eggs. The giant crumpled like a cheap lawn chair. 2 downs, 0 sweat. To make sure there were no zombie revives, he casually stomped the knight's head. Double kill secured. A delicious surge of life force flowed into him. Drinking gamer juice straight from the source was a massive flex. Loot goblin mode satisfied. Now only 4 victims remained in the neighborhood. Let the real hunt begin. Out of nowhere, a projectile zoomed straight for his head. The alert martial artist barely dodged the lethal arrow. Our hero, completely baffled by the hidden sniper, scanned the area. But before he could even spot the sneaky camper, another deadly shaft zipped his way. The young master leaped back, dodging a fatal blow, but he didn't escape unharmed. In fact, the arrow drew a thin line of blood across his cheek. Sawun wondered if the coward was done only to face an absolute hurricane of flying arrows. Realizing he was a walking target, he desperately dashed into the thick forest. Now, darting between giant trees, Sawun was honestly impressed by the crazy accuracy. Yet, the pathetic impact proved the guy lacked internal energy. The shots were super weak. Sawun smirked, wondering if this squishy sniper had a meat shield nearby. With that thought in mind, he confidently strolled back to the village. His big brain theory: smacking the annoying archer would instantly drag out his hidden partner. In his past life, our martial artist would have been crying and shaking in a corner. But now, he just saw walking breathing experience point meals. But then, a terrifying trap was sprung. As a barrage of arrows rained down from a nearby roof, one scored a clean headshot. Boom. At first glance, our overpowered hero got deleted on day 1. But psych, it was just a super convincing afterimage. The target's sudden poof into thin air left the sniper completely and utterly bamboozled. While his tiny brain tried to process the magic trick, he suddenly ate a massive, brutal boot right to the jaw. Sawun had found the camper and with one swift kick launched him straight into a wooden door. However, Sawun scratched his head. He definitely felt his foot smash some teeth, yet the loser had magically vanished into thin air. But as a faint shadow slipped by, he realized the annoying truth. Sawun sighed. He was dealing with a pay-to-win stealth cloak. Suddenly, a sneaky presence crept up right behind him, making his martial instinct scream. An invisible arrow shot out of the void, yet our hero effortlessly sidestepped it with flawless timing. Thanks to that overpowered magic cloak, Sawun couldn't track the slippery coward who was frantically tiptoeing around him. The sniper panicked, realizing he had messed with the absolute wrong boss monster. Knowing a fistfight would end his whole career, the archer scrambled for his life. But little did he know, Sawun wasn't letting free loot run away. Just like that, the hunter became the hunted. He casually trailed the invisible noob through the village. The poor sweating sniper ran like a headless chicken. Then boom, the smiling demon he was fleeing from casually blocked his path. Sawun kindly explained that using a dark stealth cloak in broad daylight was an absolute rookie mistake. Staring at the shiny premium gear, Sawun decided it was perfect for his own rank grinding. Time to unalive the owner and steal it. But wait, a third player suddenly crashed the party. The archer's slacker teammate awkwardly apologized for being ridiculously slow, but the pants-wetting marksman couldn't care less. The dual-wielding elf quickly noticed that the terrifying martial artist had mysteriously vanished from sight. Sweating bullets, the archer screamed at his buddy to secure the kill. Sawun was now stuck in an annoying 2 versus 1 because he played with his food too long. Yet the crazy guy couldn't help but grin like a maniac. He wasn't outnumbered, he just had 2 meals now. With a fierce battle cry, the dual swordsman lunged at our grinning hero. Sawun casually tilted his head, completely ignoring the swordsman as the sneaky archer took another cheap shot. The martial artist gracefully sidestepped, turning the elf into a friendly fire target, but the agile elf angrily swatted the flying arrow away. Seeing this comedy show, Seo-woon decided to sprint off. He casually dove into a narrow alleyway between two rundown houses. The archer, absolutely sick of this slippery roach, fired a shiny triple arrow combo, and smack. Just like that, our protagonist ate 3 arrows straight to the back. The sniper cheered, kissing his fancy bow of Alex. But these two clueless clowns were celebrating way too early. The real martial artist silently appeared right behind the celebrating sniper, who truly believed he was the most valuable player. Seo-woon honestly pitied the fool's sheer arrogance. Before the dynamic duo could even blink, our phantom hero delivered a devastating strike. He absolutely impaled the squishy archer from behind. With the ranged nuisance instantly deleted, Seo-woon mocked them for trusting their pathetic mortal eyes. The poor swordsman was totally flabbergasted by this god-tier trickery, realizing he just attacked a hollow illusion. Seo-woon flexed, calling himself a veteran gamer, and dared the elf to try and avenge his bleeding buddy. Provoked and furious, the elf roared, charging forward with blazing twin blades, screaming that he would be the final boss. This sudden burst of energy actually surprised our hero, and without hesitation, the two warriors launched into a deadly clash. Recognizing the glowing aura of a named ultimate attack, the martial artist fired up his own legendary technique. To pull off this spicy counter, Seo-woon had to perfectly thread the needle through the elf's flashy defense and crush his shoulder. But wait. Slash. To his absolute horror, blood sprayed from his own hand as the elf out to be way too fast. The cocky swordsman kept spamming his combo, dealing massive damage to our martial artist with his bloody rush skill. Seo-woon panicked. This spicy attack was totally different from anything he had ever faced. Without his trusty internal energy shield, he would be a total goner. The smug swordsman laughed, mocking how shallow our hero's monocore was. He rudely bragged that he didn't care how the martial artist survived the hit. Why? Because the very next thing he planned on slicing was his pretty little neck. Seo-woon knew his only chance was a perfect counterstrike, but man, he was really struggling to read this speedy tryhard's movements. Suddenly, a light bulb went off. He remembered he was totally safe from game over in this match. With zero fear of death, Seo-woon hatched an absolutely crazy, main character level plan to track the enemy's aura with his eyes completely shut. He was dead set on the fact that if this wild gamble paid off, he would moonwalk to the #1 rank. After all, our boy had spent 2 agonizing months grinding his internal energy. He was no longer that pathetic noob. He was now a true master with infinite potential. Bam, inner peace achieved. His eyes snapped open. The enemy's flashy blades clattered straight to the dirty ground. The frozen elf was completely flabbergasted that this scrub effortlessly blocked his ultimate strike. Like it was nothing. In that epic moment, Seo-woon awakened his hidden potential. Before the trash talker could even cry for mommy, our hero brutally crushed his collarbone barehanded. Boom, 4th kill secured in style. Naturally, the elite enemy dropped some absolutely deliciously sweet loot. He snagged a shiny healing scroll. Gulping it down, our fully healed hero began vacuuming up the map's loot. His only salty tear was over the busted invisibility cloak. That broken cape was completely useless now. Desperately crying out for a rare repair scroll or a master craftsman, Seo-woon shoved it in his inventory anyway and checked the rest of the drops. Oh baby, the bow of Alex. This bad boy sprinkled spicy lightning magic onto every single arrow. Weird since he didn't feel any sparks during the fight. Finding a juicy skill book for a multi-shot ability, he realized that Absolute Clown had only just learned archery. Yoink. Without a second thought, he slapped the skill book and absorbed it. Time for target practice. Seo-woon dramatically aimed and fired a crackling arrow into a poor wall. Alex's bow was a massive ultra-tier upgrade from that clunky crossbow he used in the first round. Seo-woon decided to ghost the final enemy team for a hot minute. He needed a quick breather to just chill and loot some epic gear. While rummaging through endless basic houses, he grumbled about the absolute trash tier drops and prayed to the gacha gods for a miracle. Just then, our martial artist's radar pinged. He spotted an insanely tall, super suspicious tower right smack in the village center. Big buildings equal big loot. Drooling over imaginary mythical items, he sprinted straight towards it. Untouched doors meant he was totally the first one there. Time to strip this place clean. Being the paranoid pro he is, Seo-woon quietly locked the heavy door behind him. 10 minutes later, nothing. Sweeping the giant tower, our protagonist begged the heavens for just one crumb. But nope, the chest was empty, completely bamboozled and super salty. Our hero punched the stone wall in pure rage. His luck in this game was an absolute roller coaster of tragedy. But wait, suddenly his eagle eyes caught a juicy target. It was the final surviving duo creeping around his village. Seeing these little loot goblins happily picking up trash, he smirked. Could he solo both of them? They might actually be carrying some shiny high-tier weapons. Cue the evil mastermind music. Our martial artist brainstormed a beautifully toxic strategy to one-shot them both. At that exact second, he noticed a game-winning detail. Those 2 clueless lambs were about to stroll right into his tower. Finding the door closed, these absolute noobs happily thought they hit the untouched jackpot. Panting with excitement over finding a pathetic healing scroll, they had zero clue. A predator was right above them. Siyun, who literally ignored that trash scroll because his inventory was too fat, had accidentally created the most devious bait. Smirking, he swan-dived right at the two players. He knew they were complete amateurs to be hyped over basic bandages. Siyun was brutally thirsty to start this party with a glorious first blood. The oblivious noob suddenly noticed a massive shadow rapidly expanding on the floor. Boom. Showing off with a totally unnecessary but incredibly stylish pirouette, our protagonist crashed down to the earth. Siyun had guessed one of these nerds was a squishy mage, and if he was right, there would be an annoying magic barrier to break. Crackle neon energy fragments exploded everywhere. His big brain read was completely spot on. The panicked pair began. Our hero totally freaked out as some random dude literally dropped from the sky. Time to wrap this up with one final epic strike. Suddenly, a trigger-happy mage blasted a fireball his way. Taking that to the face would have sent our main character straight to the respawn screen. He flawlessly backflipped out of the danger zone, causing that spicy fireball to become a hilarious friendly fire disaster. The blonde warrior caught a blaze frantically, doing the stop, drop, and roll dance to put it out. The chat immediately realized our absolute madman was queuing up totally solo. Nobody was backing him up at all. Right then, a big meathead with a massive axe charged right at him, yet our agile martial artist styled on him, dodging every clunky swing like an absolute boss. The sweaty tryhard screamed bloody murder. But as our hero smoothly ducked his final slash, the meathead felt his weapon connect. His face instantly drained of all color. That reckless swing our boy so gracefully sidestepped had buried itself right into his own mage's stomach. Oops, before they could even process the team kill, Siyun sneaked behind the squishy caster and absolutely caved his skull in. Just like that, the annoying duo became a very lonely solo. Witnessing this sheer brutality, the surviving warrior lost his mind and violently stripped off his heavy armor. Now standing half-naked and fully furious, this bearded weirdo was ready to throw hands. Siyun quickly did the gamer math. Stripping meant a massive speed buff for his enemy. The bulky gear was basically holding him back. Staying perfectly silent, our boy dodged the speeding axe. Time to bust out a flashy named technique. He launched himself up, delivering a beautifully crisp kick right into the giant's thick neck. However, the oversized Viking laughed, pointing out that gravity exists, and Siyun had to land eventually. Hearing this basic physics lesson, our hero suddenly started sweating bullets. In a flash, a giant axe blade completely swallowed his vision. That overpowered heavy swing was so absurdly destructive, it cleanly chopped the entire building in half. The damage output was totally broken. Realizing this, our hero smartly spammed his illusion skills. He smugly lectured the giant that having muscles for brains simply wouldn't cut it. The furious meathead completely lost his temper and aggressively lunged at the cheeky martial artist Siyun, casually dodged the deadly strike by a hair throwing a counterattack that the giant barely blocked. But here is the punchline. The angry lumberjack had absolutely no clue. The real player was chilling directly behind him while he sweated against a decoy. Having pulled off the ultimate troll move, our protagonist prepared to casually dip. The big guy completely freaked out. Realizing his actual target was just waving from the exit, Siyun then politely pointed at the crumbling ceiling of the very tower his enemy had just wrecked. With a highly mischievous grin, he decided to test out the game's physics engine. Our absolute menace, Sparta, kicked the load-bearing pillar. Watching this, the bearded warrior went into full-blown panic mode, finally questioning his terrible life choices. To his utter despair, the guy he had been fighting simply poofed into smoke like a cheap magic trick. Realizing he had been thoroughly bamboozled to death, he pathetically screamed for an admin. And just like that, cool guys, do not look at collapsing buildings, Siyun strolled away. But wait, our boy suddenly realized the environment stole his frag. The falling rocks got the official kill credit, not him. His loot goblin brain started panicking because missing out on a direct elimination meant heavily nerfed experience points. Once the comical dust cloud finally cleared up, the only trace of the buff warrior was a single twitching hand. Since the rubble blocked the spawn zone, the magical loot chest conveniently popped up in a safe spot, saving our lazy hero from a digging minigame. Now it was time for the best part, unboxing the shiny drops. Sadly, the giant warrior only dropped some basic gloves with a pitifully low-strength stat buff, but the squishy mage. That guy was a walking goldmine of bizarre legendary loot. There was a literal explosive parchment, some creepy cursed twig, a shiny philosopher's rock, and 1/8 of a mystery novel that heavily relied on a tedious collection quest to actually do anything. Swiping the dead mage's waterproof windbreaker cape, our incredibly stylish protagonist finally ditched the ruins. The Battle Royale blue zone was rapidly closing in. Siyun figured that other sweaty gamers were definitely camping nearby, so he made a tactical sprint straight toward the dead center. Our guy bolted out of there since the starter village loot was absolutely trash. Having perfectly mastered his flashy movement arts, he was basically speedrunning the map way faster than his rookie days. He suddenly blindly dashed into a high-level aggro zone, completely packed with wild respawning mobs. The game system helpfully pinged, "Watch out for regular trash mobs, juicy elite bosses, with epic drops and support beasts that dish out sweet stat buffs." Before he could read the tutorial, an ear-splitting screech jump-scared him. That was definitely not a friendly, non-playable character sound. An oversized prehistoric bird was throwing an absolute tantrum. A poor squad of players was getting absolutely swarmed by Jurassic Park rejects. Their panic-stricken mage screamed at the tank to just hold aggro, while the tank yelled back to stop healing the enemy. Suyun grabbed his popcorn, deeply amused by this glorious noob team. But he was not here to make friends. He maliciously drew his bowstring. Time to shamelessly steal their kills and their lives. Without hesitation, he let the arrows fly. The beasts were incredibly vicious. However, the blade-wielding tank and his spell-slinging partner somehow held their own. The wizard even managed to toss a beast using his Ice Lance skill. Anticipating a massive mountain of loot, after clearing out this mob, our main character, Seo-woon, smirked from the shadows. But while the meathead warrior was having the absolute time of his life, his magical buddy was sweating bullets. It cost him a ridiculous chunk of mana just to blast one pathetic mob. Suddenly, an impact violently rattled their magic shield. Panic set in. They were totally getting ganked. The frantic spellcaster shrieked that they needed to fall back immediately. A hidden sniper was here, but the blood-drunk fighter stubbornly refused since the remaining beasts were literally one hit away from dropping. This made the rather hideous wizard scream that they were about to die and should absolutely run for the hills. Watching this hilarious mid-battle domestic dispute, Seo-woon decided to beautifully sprinkle some extra chaos into the mix. Without hesitation, he unleashed a fierce triple shot. The squishy wizard instantly spotted the deadly incoming strike. Bam! The sheer force of the projectiles shattered his fragile shield like cheap glass. Panicking, the frontline fighter barked at his buddy to cast another ward pronto, but the cowardly mage just kept whining that saving their own skin was slightly more important. The greedy swordsman, however, barked that there was way too much shiny loot at stake, and they just needed to finish farming the zone. But to the absolute horror of the warrior, his brilliant teammate declared that a standard shield was practically useless against this sniper. So he wildly chanted a brand new earth spell, Escrow Protect Wall. Instantly, massive chunks of solid rock violently erupted from the dirt. Even his own frontline partner was completely baffled by this massive clown move. Our hidden archer also scratched his head. Why build a blind spot? That just made his job 10 times easier. With a wicked grin, he swiftly prepared his next deadly trick. The sweating wizard desperately argued that building a fort was the smartest way to conserve precious mana. But the raging swordsman pointed out the obvious. They literally could not see the sniper anymore. The ugly caster stammered that they could just safely teleport away once the rocks crumbled. But his furious partner, who had just sliced a giant snake in half, honestly didn't care. He coldly promised to abandon this idiot the second he tripped up again. Unfortunately for them, the disastrous flaw of this rock fortress immediately revealed itself. Any competent archer knows that gravity is a thing. High arcing arrows could easily rain down over the pathetic barricade. The terrified fighter screamed to drop the walls instantly, but the bumbling mage cried that the spell was locked in for 5 whole minutes. Seeing this utter comedy unfold, our hero casually pulled a nasty little toy from his spatial inventory. He swiftly tied a volatile bomb scroll set to violently detonate in exactly 10 seconds right onto the shaft of a crackling lightning arrow. Seo-woon decided to deliver the ultimate punchline. He casually rose from his hiding spot and drew back the bowstring. Whoosh! The deadly payload sailed beautifully through the air. It gracefully bypassed the useless rocks and planted itself right between the bickering duo. 3, 2, 1, 0. Boom, the catastrophic explosion swallowed them whole. The blistering shockwave was so absurdly destructive that it completely vaporized those supposedly impenetrable earth walls. Seo-woon, honestly shocked by how ridiculously overpowered his own trick, was casually stomped a creeping serpent monster that tried to sneak up on him. As the thick dust finally settled, the visually offensive wizard was reduced to a smoking pile of extra crispy bacon. But suddenly a bloodied hand burst from the rubble. The battered warrior couldn't help but curse his dead partner. Thanks to that absolute moron, he was now clinging to his last hit points. But his sigh of relief was completely cut chillingly short. Pinned beneath the heavy rocks, the swordsman stared straight down the glowing shaft of a loaded arrow. Seo-woon coldly mocked him, thanking the hilariously incompetent mage for serving up such an easy victory. Defeated, the warrior coughed blood, laughing that he still had so much to learn about this brutal world. Truly, picking a party member with an actual brain was a vital survival skill. With a wry smile, he completely accepted his brutally unavoidable game over. A glowing loot box instantly spawned in the crater, confirming the wizard was definitely 100% dead before the blast even faded. Ripping open the swordsman's stash, he scored a blade mastery manual, a dash skill book, and even a rare footwork scroll, but what a total joke. Since our boy was fundamentally a rogue archer, these heavy melee skills were absolutely useless trash to him. However, his wicked ambush wasn't a total bust. The warrior happened to drop the legendary Ring of Toa, an accessory that massively boosts magical defense stats. A second later, another sparkly treasure chest materialized from the crispy ashes. This shiny cube obviously belonged to the brain-dead mage. Seowun practically drooled when he fished out a solid gold escrow necklace. Ka-ching! He also dug up a tier 4 spell tome, which was incredibly frustrating because his magic stats were way too low to even read the title. Stuffing the loot away, he finally turned his attention back to the hissing snake mobs. Honestly, after effortlessly one-shotting them a few minutes later, the archer actually felt immense pity for the dead duo. Imagine violently struggling against such hilariously pathetic fodder, but to his surprise, clearing the mob actually yielded some bonus shiny ground loot. The dead serpents actually dropped an ultra-rare material. He scooped up a shimmering tear of lamia, a crucial crafting ingredient for mind control magic, along with a neat little necklace that bumped up his agility stat. He quickly decided that the speed boost was a fantastic find, but tossed the weird teardrop into his bag as useless junk. Later that evening, while chilling completely alone, mid-meditation, our guy realizes something spicy. Boss monsters absolutely must drop those broken game-changing buffs. But hold up. Rushing a boss right now, that is a one-way ticket to the respawn screen. He must check his solo carry potential first, and guess if other tryhards are camping the spawn. Day 2 officially kicks off. 60 players got completely wiped on day 1. Since he personally styled on 8 of those unfortunate noobs, Seo is proudly flexing his glorious kill-death ratio. But enough gloating, his top priority is to rush the map center before anyone else. Too bad the weather system hates him. It is hot enough to roast a goblin out here. Our sweaty hero realizes sunset travel would have been way smarter. Suddenly, a massive shadow completely blocks out the blazing sun. His gamer senses instantly tingle. That oversized pigeon is dropping supplies. The second the crate hits the dirt, he sprints over to check it. But wait, this loot box is absolutely massive. It is a cursed chest, promising legendary gear, but it will broadcast his live location to every single player every 30 minutes. Talk about a wildly toxic trade-off. Seo faces a brutal choice. But hey, since there is zero elimination risk in this specific match, why not embrace the total chaos? Risk it for the biscuit. Jin Seoun violently pops the lid, and his jaw hits the absolute floor at the shiny loot inside. Jackpot. And that wraps our epic run. Smash that like button, keep grinding, and catch you next time.